stuffed and tired. Just joking. It is April 26, 2022. We are going to have a special board meeting. So, Clerk of the Board, would you please read the item? Oh, yes. Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, I'm out of order. I'm going to look to Quincy stood up. So, Quincy, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, Clerk of the Board, would you please read the public participation procedures?
Good afternoon. During the board meeting, citizens who wish to provide public comment will be invited to do so by the board chair. Citizens who are physically present will be called first. Citizens who are not present and wish to provide remote public comment via Zoom may use the raise hand feature on their computer or press *9 if participating by phone to enter the queue. The moderator will read the last 4 digits for phone-only participants in lieu of name. Zoom webinar via your computer at https://twami-ca.gov/j/833-3099-0337 and or by phone only at 1-720-707-2699 with webinar ID 833-3099-0337. Note, Zoom webinar services tends to have a reduced broadcasting delay in comparison to the Access Tuolumne live stream and is suggested for the closest to real-time viewing and listening. Written comments may be submitted by U.S. mail at the address listed on the agenda or emailed to buspublic@co.tuolumne.ca.us for retention as part of the administrative record. They will not be read during the meeting. Options for public access audio and video live streaming. The public will not have access for public comments via these media options. They are for audio and visual only. Option 1, Tuolumne County website at www.tuolumnecounty.ca.gov/board-meetings. And 2, Access Tuolumne County at www.accesstuolumne.org by clicking Watch Live and or on Comcast Cable 8. Important public notice, pursuant to AB 361, members of the Board of Supervisors can participate by teleconference. Accessibility requirements. If you need swift special assistance during the board meeting, please call 209-533-5521.
All right, thank you. With that being said, would you please read our 1 p.m. appointment?
Yes, sir. 1 p.m. public hearing to consider appeal of the approval of Site Development Permit SDP 20-005 and mitigated negative declaration for Site Development Permit SDP 20-005.
Okay, with that being said, here in a minute, I'm going to have Council Cody's going to kind of give us a high overview of the process. And then also, before we get started, I did want to disclose real quick, I did have a phone conversation a few weeks back and also a quick Zoom meeting with some of the property owners. Most of it was related to getting it on the agenda and timelines and stuff, but I just wanted to disclose that. I can make a fair and impartial decision moving forward from today. So I wanted to disclose that, and I don't know if any other board member wanted to comment.
I will also disclose that had contact with Jaron Newsman from the Yonder Project. He reached out to me to have a meeting, also on Zoom, to discuss the project, and I don't feel that our discussion will impact my decision today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've met with the group pretty much that's here today, and along with Mary, the landowner, sorry, I don't remember her, Curtis, at the Groveland Chamber of Commerce mixer where they made the presentation, and I've talked to Tim Kin once or twice at least via phone call or Zoom about this project, since it is in District 4, to make sure I am fully educated about it, and I feel like I can make a fair and impartial decision at today's meeting.
Also like to disclose, I had a 1-hour video chat talking about the project and reviewing it. It's not uncommon for any major project that's coming in. This is with several of the applicants we have here today, and I believe I can make a fair and impartial decision about the project.
Good. All right. Hey. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to County Council or Quincy, whoever wants to take it away.
Supervisor Kirk, before
Sure.
we begin, I just wanted to introduce your board and the public to Tiffany Wright. She's with Ramos and Manley, and she's our outside counsel who has assisted us with this project. And so there will probably be times where Cody or myself will look to Tiffany to respond to questions from your board. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good afternoon, Board. Cody Nesper, Deputy County Counsel. Regarding the procedures for today's hearing, what we are recommending is that the Board Chair will open the public hearing. County staff will present on the project and on the appeal. Then the appellant will have their opportunity, 20 minutes, to make their case. The applicant will have 20 minutes to respond. And then at that time, the board can ask questions of staff, the appellant, the applicant. I would recommend, to the extent possible, that you hold your questions until after the presentations are done, so the applicant and appellant get their 20 minutes. And then we'll have public comment after that. And then after that, the board chair would close the public hearing, and we can move on to board discussion and a motion and a vote.
Okay. And maybe when you guys do your presentation, again, just reiterate the high level, what our board is here to do today as far as the decisions that are in front of us, so we keep it clear, because I know sometimes these things can, as we get going, we forget why we're here. So could you make that real clear as you present? And so with that being said, I did open the public hearing, but just confirm public hearing is now open. So staff, please take it away.
Sure. Good afternoon, board and members of the public. My name is Quincy Yaley. I'm the Community Development Department Director. And before we get started with the presentation on the project, I just wanted to make sure your board understood that the project type before you is a site development permit. These permits come to your board infrequently, as a site development permit is typically reviewed by either the CDD director or the planning commission. And so it would really only come before your board on appeal, such as we're here today. And a site development permit, we issue it to ensure that certain types of proposed developments will achieve a desirable design. We review these applications for conformance to the latest accepted planning and engineering standards, specifically covering the following areas: site layout, structure design, landscaping, water and sewer service and other utilities, surface drainage and erosion control, fire protection, access, traffic, and parking. Before we make recommendations on a project such as this, our staff will review the project to ensure that under the circumstances of the particular case, that a proposed development will not be substantially detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use. And this project is reviewed under our general plan, our ordinance code, and applicable environmental regulations. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the project planner, our senior planner, Natalie Rizzi.
All right. Hello, I am Natalie Rizzi, Senior Planner, and the project before you is Site Development Permit SDP 20-005, and the applicant is Yonder Hospitality. The project consists of Site Development Permit SDP 20-005 to allow the development of a hospitality site consisting of 175 guest suite accommodations, lodge, market and bar, pool, employee housing, event space, and supporting infrastructure. The project also includes a mitigated negative declaration, or MND, for Site Development Permit SDP 20-005, conditions of approval 1 through 95, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Site Development Permit SDP 20-005 and the mitigated negative declaration were considered by the Tuolumne County Planning Commission on March 16, 2020. The Planning Commission unanimously voted to approve the project with a vote of 7-0. The vote was based on findings A through F for the MND and A through D for the Site Development Permit. The approval also included the conditions of approval for Site Development Permit SDP 20-005 and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. An appeal of the Commission's decision was submitted on March 28, 2022. The Board's review of the appeal triggers a de novo review of the project, which is a comprehensive review of the entitlement, and the Board shall consider the public record, receive testimony, and make any findings and determinations necessary to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the application. The project site is located southwest and southeast of the intersection of State Route 120 and Memorial Drive in the community of Big Oak Flat. The project site consists of 10 legal parcels zoned C1 with a general plan designation of general commercial. A tentative re-subdivision and merger exhibit map was approved by the Tuolumne County Surveyor on September 14, 2021. The merger and re-subdivision would reconfigure the site from 10 legal parcels to 4. The final map has not been submitted and approved yet. Here is a map of the project site and surrounding parcels. The parcel configuration would vary following approval of the final map as previously described. Here is the site plan for the western half of the project site. The parking areas would be concentrated near the highway with guest suites located on the back portion of the site. 150 of the guest suite accommodations would be located west of Memorial Drive. This half of the site plan contains the pool and pool house, lodge, market, and bar. Here's the site plan for the eastern half of the project site. The main entrance is located off State Route 120 with secondary right-in, right-out access off Memorial Drive. The event space is located in this half of the site along Memorial Drive. Employee housing, 25 guest suites, and an additional parking lot are located east of Memorial Drive. Here are the typical elevations and floor plan for the guest suites. Each suite would have a sleeping area and full bathroom. An initial study / mitigated negative declaration, or ISMND, was prepared for Site Development Permit SDP 20-005. Mitigation measures have been incorporated to reduce impacts to a less than significant level. The measures are verified through a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. The ISMND was circulated for public review for 30 days from July 13, 2021 to August 12, 2021. No recirculation of the ISMND was warranted based on the responses. Initial stakeholder notification letters were sent when the project was received in September 2020. Property owners within 1,000 feet, various stakeholder groups, including the Groveland Big Oak Flat Interest List, and advisory agencies were notified at this time. During that time, 13 responses from non-public agencies and members of the public were received. 9 responses were received during the circulation of the ISMND. 5 of these were from public agencies and 4 were from non-public agencies and members of the public. Additional comments have been received after the initial stakeholder notification and circulation of the environmental document. All comments received prior to the board agenda were included in the board packet. Any late comment submittals have been forwarded to the board members and posted on the website. An appeal letter was submitted on March 28, 2022 following the Planning Commission's approval of Site Development Permit SDP 20-005 and the mitigated negative declaration. The comments received throughout the processing of the application indicated common areas of concern. Full responses to each area of concern are located within the staff report, response to comments document in the final ISMND, and the appeal memo. I will summarize the common concerns addressed in the following slides. One main concern addressed was water and sewer capacity. The project site is located within the service area of the Groveland Community Services District, or GCSD, and will therefore be provided public water and sewer by GCSD. Mitigation measure Util 1 is incorporated to require that the applicant enter into an agreement with GCSD for water and sewer services. This agreement will ensure there is capacity to serve the project at the time of development prior to construction, and that the project will comply with all GCSD rules and regulations. GCSD's rules and regulations are included in their October 5, 2020 letter to the county. Recent updates to 2 of GCSD's policies pertaining to the formation of a Community Facilities District, or CFD, and funding can be found on the project webpage. GCSD has indicated that there is water and sewer capacity to serve the project, as indicated in their April 18, 2022 letter to the county. The letter indicates that there is water capacity to serve the project even in drought conditions based on the project demands evaluated by GCSD district engineers. The collection of capacity and connection fees paid by the project applicant would go towards the project's proportional cost of future upgrades and expansion of the district services. An update is planned for the district's wastewater treatment systems. However, this was not triggered solely by the project, as an upgrade has been needed for the aging system. Conditions have been incorporated into the conditions of site development permit SDP 20-005 to verify compliance of GCSD's rules and regulations at various stages of project development. Another main concern addressed was related to traffic increase and traffic safety. A traffic impact study and intersection analysis was prepared for the project, which concluded a less than significant impact to traffic. The project proponent is required to pay traffic impact mitigation fees to the county, which go towards the project's cumulative unforeseen impacts on the county-wide road system. The project is required to bring the turn pockets on the highway and encroachments up to Caltrans standards. All internal roadways would be designed to meet County Title 11 standards. The appeal letter specifically raised concerns of the Pork Chop and Memorial Drive intersection improvements. The Memorial Drive intersection would restrict left turns from and onto State Route 120 utilizing a Pork Chop design feature, as well as signage and lighting at the request of Caltrans after multiple discussions with the project applicant team. These design features were not incorporated by mitigation as they are triggered by Caltrans standards and have been incorporated into the project design. These design features were analyzed in the traffic study and ISMND. The project proponent is required to obtain an encroachment permit from Caltrans and the Tuolumne County Department of Public Works. Their review of the encroachment permit application would ensure that these specific design elements have been incorporated. The traffic study has been reviewed and approved by Caltrans and the Department of Public Works. The full study and correspondence from Caltrans is included in the packet. The appeal letter cited concerns with VMT, or vehicle miles traveled analysis, specifically with the citing of the Yards bus stop credits. The project VMT impacts were analyzed under the Tuolumne County VMT memo adopted by the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors on August 4, 2020 as Resolution 74-20. The Tuolumne County VMT thresholds established thresholds of significance for hotels based on the annual average VMT per room of nearby hotels. The traffic impact study evaluated whether the project's annual average VMT per room is less than or equal to the Groveland sub-area baseline VMT per room. It is less than the baseline VMT per room, and therefore less than significant impact was found. The proposed project screens out from a detailed VMT analysis. Therefore, while the Yards stop will reduce VMTs associated with the project, it is not a mitigation measure since impacts are less than significant. The appeal letter addressed concern with the lack of pedestrian facilities, including sidewalks connecting to Groveland and Big Oak Flat, a pedestrian crosswalk across State Route 120, and off-site bicycle lanes. There are no existing or planned pedestrian or bicycle facilities within the vicinity of the project area. The traffic impact study did not identify the need for pedestrian or bicycle facilities, as no project impacts would necessitate these improvements. Additionally, Caltrans did not identify or require the development of sidewalks, a pedestrian crosswalk across State Route 120, or bicycle facilities, nor do they encourage them. The project includes development of on-site pedestrian facilities, which would connect to the proposed on-site Yards bus stop and on-site amenities. It is not reasonable to assume that guests or employees would walk the long distances to and from the project and adjacent communities. Phase 1 of the project includes on-site employee housing, and the project includes operation of a van shuttle service to destinations in Groveland and Big Oak Flat for project guests. The project would not increase hazards due to a geometric design feature or incompatible uses, so there is no nexus to require construction of off-site sidewalks along the state highway system to link the project to the nearest town. There is no community plan for Groveland or Big Oak Flat located within the Tuolumne County General Plan. The Tuolumne County Ordinance Code does not include requirements for the creation or development of pedestrian or bicycle facilities. Chapter 10.48 of the Tuolumne County Ordinance Code, which is the only chapter of the Ordinance Code relative to pedestrian facilities, includes provisions for crosswalks and does not identify the need for new crosswalks except for on Moccasin Switchback Road, which is miles from the project vicinity. Therefore, the project would not conflict with a program, plan, ordinance, or policy related to pedestrian or bicycle facilities as identified in the ISMND, and the impacts would be less than significant. Concerns related to the lack of sidewalks or bicycle facilities located off-site are outside the purview of CEQA. Another main concern addressed was related to employee housing. The project includes the development of on-site employee housing. 2 dorm-style buildings are proposed with a total of 48 rooms. This would accommodate up to 96 employees during peak season. The appeal letter indicated that the project would trigger the need for 175 on-site employees, and therefore the ISMND does not adequately analyze the population growth impacts. The project applicant has indicated that the 175 number of employees indicated in the appeal letter would not be realistic for the development. The claims were speculative and lack technical or scientific support. The final ISMND considered the project's impact on population and housing based on the permanent and seasonal employment needs. The appeal letter addressed concerns regarding the Oak Woodland analysis and cited TCOC Chapter 9.24 as the basis. However, the intent of Chapter 9.24 is to discourage the premature removal of oak resources by establishing procedures and penalties for such removal. Chapter 9.24 and any analysis or measures indicated in the chapter is triggered when native oak trees are removed from a project site within 5 years preceding the submittal of an application for a discretionary entitlement. Oak trees were not removed within 5 years prior to the application of Site Development Permit SDP 20-005. Therefore, Chapter 9.24 does not apply. The biostudy for the project concluded that the site's vegetation did not meet the California Native Plant Society or California Department of Fish and Wildlife rules to be accurately classified as interior live oak woodland and forest. The ISMND analyzed the project under Tuolumne County General Plan Natural Resources element found in Chapter 16, which is the only county-approved document related to oak woodland analysis. Mitigation measures have been incorporated to reduce biological impacts to less than significant impacts. Another main concern addressed was related to public services, specifically fire, police, and ambulance services. Issues related to public services under CEQA are limited to impacts related to construction of new or altered facilities. No new facilities are proposed or required to be constructed as a result of the project. GCSD would provide fire response to the project site. Funding would be provided by the project to GCSD for these services, specifically by their collection of development, impact fees, and formation of a project-specific CFD or other mechanism to provide annual taxes. GCSD has indicated in their April 18, 2022 letter that these requirements would alleviate any potential impacts on their fire services and that existing facilities could provide service to the project. Police services are provided by the Tuolumne County Sheriff's Office, with additional enforcement provided by the California Highway Patrol. Both of these agencies were sent notifications of the project and environmental document. Neither agency responded or indicated a need for new or altered facilities as a result of the project. There is no evidence that the project might require new or physically altered police facilities. Therefore, under CEQA, impacts related to public services would be less than significant. Many of the concerns addressed pertain to funding for public services. These issues are outside the scope of CEQA and are addressed in the next slide. Many of the recent responses received address concerns with the County Transient Occupancy Tax, or TOT, specifically requesting the money to remain in the Groveland area. Any specific allocation of TOT funds must be authorized and approved by the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. The recent tax measure that updated the TOT was a general tax measure and did not include any specific allocation of the funds. The TOT is captured by the Tuolumne County General Fund, which provides funding for county fire, sheriff, and emergency services countywide. Concerns have been raised regarding additional funding for fire, ambulance, and police services. The County Administration Office has been working on development impact fees that would be paid by proponents of commercial development. The impact fees would exclusively go towards park, fire, and public safety services, including sheriff and ambulance services. These fees would be calculated and collected prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, so the proposed project would likely pay these fees as they are intended to be adopted this fiscal year. These fees would be allocated by the county to go towards the services that are provided by GCSD. GCSD updated their rules and regulations related to the formation of a community facility district in funding for large commercial development. These revised rules and policies were approved by GCSD Board on March 8, 2020, and apply to the Yonder project. The applicant will be required to create and annex into a CFD, which would include an annual funding mechanism for fire and park services. The CFD would only contain the parcels that comprise the project site for the Yonder Hospitality Development and would not impact other parcels within the district. Once a certificate of occupancy is issued by the county, the CFD tax would be placed on the tax roll and the project proponent would be required to pay annually. The project applicant and GCSD will enter into an agreement which will include the provisions of the CFD. The intent of these GCSD policy revisions is to provide sustainable funding for the provision of public services as the district grows. These new policies ensure that the financial burden of large development projects is borne by the project and not the existing users within the GCSD district. GCSD has indicated there is existing capacity to serve the project. Conditions have been incorporated to verify compliance with these GCSD rules and regulations during project development. And the next slide, as we wanted to go over the definition of substantial evidence.
Thank you. So this slide's intended as a kind of a reminder to the board that any of the findings that the board makes or any conditions that are imposed upon this project need to be supported by substantial evidence. CEQA has a definition of substantial evidence in the guidelines, and as is reflected on the screen, substantial evidence means relevant information and reasonable inferences from this information. And this is with regard to the fair argument standard, which would trigger a environmental impact report, that a fair argument can be made to support a conclusion, even though other conclusions might also be reached. Important to note that argument, speculation, unsubstantiated opinion or narrative, evidence which is clearly erroneous or inaccurate, or evidence of social or economic impacts which do not contribute to or are not caused by physical impacts to the environment do not constitute substantial evidence. So just want to remind the board to keep that standard in mind when listening to and receiving the evidence today at the hearing.
All right, and then I just wanted to conclude with what your decision process today will be like. The Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors can approve site development permit STP 20 and the mitigated negative declaration with the conditions as proposed. Approve site development permit STP 20-005 and the mitigated negative declaration with modifications. Deny site development permit SDP 20-005 and the mitigated negative declaration, or send the project back to staff.
So that concludes the presentation from the county staff, and at this time, where do we go next? And at this time, we'll turn it back to the board chair and to move on with presentation by the appellant.
Okay, thank you for that. So I am going to open up to the appellant. Does he have a presentation to give, or just not using any technology?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. And go ahead, you're on with the board. And you got 20 minutes.
Hi there.
Time. Thank you.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, and we are going to put a 20-minute time frame on it. I'll give you a heads up when you got about 5 minutes left and kind of keep you in the loop.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Lee Zimmerman. I'm one of the owners of Rush Creek Lodge and Evergreen Lodge. And I don't get to talk to you all very often, so thank you for the time today. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, as my family obligations have made it not possible. So we've owned the Evergreen for over 20 years now, and we built Rush Creek from the ground up. We're the single largest provider of TOT in the county and have been for many years. I believe no one in this county understands better than we do the benefits, implications, and risks of hotel development in our area. We find ourselves for the third time now having to both advocate for what we feel is critical and try to help represent others in the community who are very concerned about a proposed project. While all have grown tired of having to be the defenders of our residential and business community, the issues are critical, so we feel we have to push for what's right and for what will give us the freedoms and safety we deserve. We know we're working with well-intentioned developers and a well-intentioned county. We're also working in a county whose residents refuse to approve even a modest sales or property tax increase. So TOT dollars have become an irresistible carrot, driving approval of proposed hospitality developments at all cost. We, in part, have created this carrot by building 2 successful resorts and generating hundreds of jobs and millions in tax revenue for the county. But despite the best of intentions, the desire to see the once failed Scar site developed and to increase TOT have resulted in both parties working to quickly push the approval of this project without fully acknowledging and addressing a number of key impacts from the project of this size at this location, which will endanger both residents and businesses in our small up-the-hill community. It's critical that any approval of this project contain 2 key items. 1, reducing its size from a proposed 175 rooms to a more appropriate scale of 100 rooms. And 2, firmly and fully committing the resources needed to address the increased emergency services demand as a result of this and other recently approved projects in the area. These 2 items are essential for the safety and well-being of our community. The last 2 hotel developments were approved under the previous Board of Supervisors, which aggressively pushed the developments through the approval process, despite clear risks and unaddressed items spelled out through extensive and consistent public comment. Both developments were hastily approved at year-end 2020 to avoid giving this new board the chance to even have a voice in the process. Well, today you have a voice, and we plead with you to please be measured and thoughtful about this important decision regarding the largest ever proposed hotel development in our county. By way of history, the approval process at Rush Creek Lodge started in 1987 and was completed in 2004, after additional conditions were added, increasing on-site staff housing. 17 years is obviously a ridiculous length of time, but it did allow for a methodical process and issues to be raised and addressed along the way. On the other end of the spectrum, fast-tracking large developments without taking the time to truly think through the consequences and plan accordingly is the other extreme that we see happening currently, which needs to be avoided today. Both recently fast-tracked projects resulted in lawsuits over their unmitigated significant impacts. One of the outcomes of both lawsuits was to reduce the developments to more appropriate size. Terra V, originally proposed at 250 rooms and approved at 125, was reduced to 98 rooms. Under Canvas was similarly reduced from 99 to 75 tent cabins. Yonder's current proposed size is 175 rooms, larger than Under Canvas and Terra V combined, and inconsistent with the scale of other hospitality in the area. Reducing the scale of this development to a more reasonable 100 rooms, similar in size to Terra V, is the single best way to mitigate the numerous negative impacts and risks to our up-the-hill community, while still resulting in a profitable development, short of rejecting the project altogether or sending it back for much-needed additional mitigation. Our previous letters and those of others clearly highlight that the proposed mitigated neg deck too quickly dismisses impacts and fails to consider cumulative effects, and that the impacts of this development, as proposed at 175 rooms, will be significant and will negatively affect the tiny sidewalk-free town of Groveland and our broader community in the following areas: labor market, staff housing, emergency service needs, public water and sewer, Groveland town services, and traffic and the evacuation corridor. The negative impacts of each of these areas are detailed in our previous letters, and in the interest of time, I'll just touch on a few of them. First is staff housing. Current on-site housing will not accommodate all staff. Even with simpler operations than ours, Yonder will need about 1 staff per room, or about 175 staff as proposed, versus the 96 housing slots they have planned. Note that we have 1.4 staff per room, with fairly similar facilities, but more complex operation. There are few potential local employees living in the community, so most incremental staff for the new developments will move to the area once hired and will need rental housing. However, Groveland desperately lacks rental stock, with all potential housing being used for short-term vacation rentals currently. The housing needs of additional Yonder staff will further drive up housing and rental prices in the area, and scaling back the development will better align the proposed staff housing with the actual staffing requirements. Second is evacuation. Many recall the evacuation challenges of the recent fire near Groveland, and putting over 600 more people at Yonder in the path of the single-lane highway and only route out of town has many residents worried for their safety, and that issue has not been addressed or mitigated. Third is emergency services. So limited county resources for fire, police, and ambulance will not be able to accommodate this large project while serving and protecting us and others adequately, especially when combined with the other new hospitality developments already approved. Current response times to our lodges are 45 minutes for fire and 60 to 90 minutes for sheriff and ambulance services. This will only get worse with more demand in the same supply. Substantial increases in capacity are needed to keep us safe, and none have been committed. This next part is super important, and it's vital to avoiding a catastrophe that both hurts our community and impacts the very TOT the county seeks. GCSD, with the best of intentions, I believe, attempted to address the need for increased emergency services in their recent appeal response letter. They described a future implementation of, quote, development impact fees and CFD, or other annual funding, end quote. This is the part that should be extremely worrisome to all. It is all theory. There's no assurance in any way that these will actually ever be implemented, or that the fees will fund a truck and 3 staff, as GSD describes they might. More importantly, the criterion GCSD defines for doing so is, quote, when increases in call volume warrant such an expansion, which is completely discretionary and may very well mean never, or at least not until a tragedy forces it to happen. This also means that the county will lack capacity to respond to emergency events with any greater capacity than we currently have now, before development of these multiple projects with the hundreds of new hotel rooms and facilities. The county is spending millions of grant dollars on a new fire resiliency center. We support this. However, as we have all seen, the best fire resiliency is the ability to react quickly to put out fires before they get out of hand and devastate a community. It's not about frequency of incidents as suggested by the call volume criterion, but about the ability to respond to multiple incidents at once, given the increased risks of adding numerous new large developments to our small community. With the current limited firefighting capacity up the hill, the county lacks capability to respond to multiple incidents, and the likelihood of multiple similarly timed incidents increases dramatically as all these new developments get added. You can already see the future here. As currently designed, it will take a catastrophe happening in PML, Groveland, or more remote areas of our community to finally trigger implementation of the needed increase in emergency services. And there's nothing in what has been outlined that will ensure the needed capacity increase will happen otherwise. It's this lack of firm commitment to increase emergency resources to keep us safe and to do so by the time the developments come online that is the central hole in the plan to mitigate impacts from this and other developments. Without any definitive increase in emergency services, but just a proposed future funding mechanism, the impacts of these developments clearly have not been mitigated. Approving yet another development without this commitment leaves our businesses and our entire community at risk in pursuit of TOT. There's a clear and a compelling opportunity to actually address this essential item, and we implore the board to do so before approving the new development. While we know there may be current restrictions that need to be navigated, the supervisor should use their leadership and powers to commit a portion of the TOT generated by all of the new developments to fund needed emergency and public service enhancements to protect us. Funding should cover upfront capital requirements and ongoing operating costs. Investment in our community up the hill are clearly required to safely generate all this new TOT, and a share of the TOT should be dedicated to protecting the community and both the new and existing tax base. TOT just increased from 10 to 12%. We recommend that this newfound additional 2% be committed to the protection required for our community. This approach will tie the additional resources needed to when the developments come online, which is completely appropriate. And it will ensure the services actually happen rather than being a future promise without commitment or defined timeline, as is currently the case. This TOT allocation, combined with the proposed emergency services fees for new properties, will ensure all are served well despite the growth. Without it, our homeowners and businesses risk bearing the burden of the costs to try to support these developments, or worse, being at greater peril as a result of them. Adding permanent new firefighting resources in the area, such as a manned fire station at Hell's Hollow or Sawmill Mountain, in addition to another engine and staff at the Groveland station, will give the needed quick response to protect against catastrophic events that threaten the community residents and businesses, as well as the new TOT base, which the county will become so reliant on. Again, it's not about frequency of need for these resources, but about the scale of devastation that can ensue if a fast-fighting fire response is not available. If Rush Creek, Terra V, Yonder Yosemite, or another property burns down, aside from catastrophe to human life and physical property, millions in county tax revenues will be gone in an instant and likely forever. For better or worse, the impact of the destruction of a major hotel generating hundreds of jobs and millions in annual tax revenues is different than the loss of a home. It's not more important, but it's different. Investment in a higher level of emergency services is needed to protect these resources, these sources of jobs and tax revenue. And fortunately, this infrastructure can be funded through a portion of the tax revenue the hotels themselves generate. If the additional emergency services are there but never needed, well, that's a great outcome. If they're not there and a fire destroys one or more of these properties, that's a disaster that could have been avoided. So before approving yet another development, we need this board to formally commit to define a portion of the new TOT to additional firefighting resources. It's doable, and our appeal letter footnotes other counties that have made similar directed commitments of TOT. And stepping back, my final thoughts for you. The county's previous approach to quickly approving these multiple and near simultaneous developments has been flawed. The county has been acting as an order taker and considering projects individually and granting development approvals with no advanced county planning and no provision for additional associated infrastructure to support the growth and avoid putting local citizens and businesses at risk. The current Yonder proposal, combined with the recent approvals of Terra V and Under Canvas, plus the opening of Berkeley Camp, would more than triple current lodging up the hill in just a few years. And does it feel right to jump from 300 to 1,000 lodging rooms in a small community at high risk of wildfires and droughts without upfront county infrastructure planning and associated financial commitments? For everyone's safety, we just cannot continue to ignore cumulative impacts of multiple projects. The prior board, through being dismissive of concerns raised and forcing lawsuits to get legitimate issues addressed, has succeeded in quelling the voices of dissenters and disempowering the public. Many who would speak in opposition today and who expressed concern over the previous developments have lost faith in the process and their ability to be heard due to the lack of responsiveness to legitimate concerns raised at other recent development approval hearings. We implore the board today to act with discipline and diligence to protect our community and to avoid forcing your citizens to pursue yet another lawsuit to protect themselves when the county is not acting on their behalf to protect them. Specifically, reduce the scale of the proposed Yonder development to a more reasonable 100 rooms to mitigate many of the currently unmitigated impacts, and create a definitive, clearly defined, permanent funding mechanism, such as the newly added 2% increase in TOT to support increased emergency services for the very area that's generating the new tax revenues and that is put at greater risk by doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. You do have a few minutes left. Are you concluded?
No, this is Ryan Lederman,
Okay.
and I'm with the appellant. And thank you, Lee, for those very articulate comments. So I represent Friends of the Groveland and Big Oak Flat Corridor community. And it's a community group. And during the past few weeks, I've had the pleasure of having discussions with various different local folks and residents and business owners, such as Lee, Kay Crow, Cynthia Nesmith, Tracy Giles. They've indicated an issue with services in the community and the exacerbation of wildfire risk and fire evacuation. We even have an email from the Office of Emergency Services Coordinator from Dor Beats, who sent out an email saying that there are no actual studies on impact on fire and emergency services except for the required plans required for development. If there's not a smoking gun, and no pun intended, about the impact of projects, of these cumulative projects, that they haven't been analyzed on fire safety and fire hazards and exacerbation of wildfire risks, we've got that. That is substantial evidence in the record. Is more than a fair argument that there is a risk. There are other examples of substantial evidence of a fair argument of a significant environmental impact. The project will exacerbate wildfire risks and effects, the impact on population and housing, impacts on public services, and cumulative impacts. This project particularly has 2 pages of analysis on cumulative impacts, and most of the cumulative impacts were scoped out. And these, the analysis of cumulative impacts was not even in the draft M&D that was circulated for public review. So there are a number of issues with the cumulative impacts. The cumulative impacts do not, the M&D did not look at the population and housing impacts of tripling the number of hotel rooms on the community. When you have short-term rentals and you have the number of employees who are there, they just will not have housing. What will that do to the housing market in the community? It will encourage greater growth, and there is zero analysis of this impact in the M&D. This is a new significant cumulative impact. There's been no analysis of cumulative wildfire and fire impacts, as evidenced by your own Office of Emergency Services Coordinator's correspondence. There is a significant cumulative impact that just was not analyzed. Public services and utilities. I think the Community Service District is trying to do the right thing. However, there's no assurance. What is that fee? What is it going to mitigate? What are the standards? There's just nothing in the record that indicates what they're going to pay and why and when, and it's too uncertain. And that's not even in the M&D. There's nothing in the M&D except a requirement for having a will serve letter. That's not enough under CEQA. It's just a trust me. And then we've made an issue about pedestrian impacts. There is a cumulative issue here as well, which was absolutely not analyzed whatsoever in the M&D. People are going to be walking to neighborhood businesses, and I know it's sparsely populated in certain areas, but they're going to go to around the horn. They're going to walk, and the reason why they're going to walk is this project takes a VMT credit for proximity to nearby uses. And if it's dangerous for people to walk, even 2 blocks or for 5 minutes because they're going to get hit by a car, that is a danger. That is an impact to these people. And when you combine it with all the other hotels along the 120 corridor, that is a cumulative impact. I want to thank you for your consideration. We do have legitimate, real concerns about the environmental impacts of this project that have just not been taken into account with the M&D and any of the subsequent analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to look to my left and right. Do we want to take a 5-minute break before we move forward? Yeah, okay, we're going to take a 6-minute break. We'll come back at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Presentation by the applicant. Again, we have 20 minutes set aside. We'll put a timer on it. Once we get to about 5 minutes, it'll give you guys a heads up that you got about 5 minutes left.
You ready? Excellent. Good afternoon, Chair Kirk, fellow commissioners, staff, members of the public. Thank you for allowing us to present today. I'm Tim Kim, owner of TK Consulting and project manager for Yonder Yosemite Highway 120 Lodging. We have representatives here today from the landowner, developer, and our team. This experienced team has already developed Yonder Escalante, a very successful similar project in Utah. I'm going to provide some general information for context and then turn it over to our architect and site planner and our team to walk through our project and some of the responses to what you've heard tonight. And then I'll wrap up at the end. And we also have folks ready if we don't cover within the 20 minutes. Some of the things you want to hear, we can certainly cover it during the Q&A. As you know, this property is known as the SCAR because it was approved and completely graded decades ago and then was abandoned. It was stripped bare, and this led to decades of erosion, and little of the vegetation has grown back. I'm sure many of you have driven by it or maybe walked the property. The county, the environmental advocates, and many members of the community have agreed that this is the right site for this type of development. This is also a great fit because lodging, despite what we heard a few minutes ago, lodging is very underserved along Highway 120, especially when you look at the other corridors in the area and heading up to Yosemite. One thing about this is it makes no sense to not develop this kind of property here because right now we've got folks driving up 120, going to Yosemite and other locations and driving all the way back down the hill for lodging. And you're bearing the brunt of the traffic going up and back, and none of the local businesses are really benefiting from that. You're losing significant tourism dollars. These tourism dollars are critical to the survival and growth of many local businesses and to the area as a whole. That said, the site is physically difficult and extremely expensive to build. This is due to the erosion, the environmental issues, the extremely high level of requirements that burden developments these days, and not to mention the significant inflation we've all seen over the past decade. And now we've got high interest rates on top of that, which will hit the construction loans. After a number of false starts, we finally have a developer who is willing to do an impressive, high-quality development in a way that truly minimizes impacts to the land, protects the wetlands and other environmental features, and restores the vegetation with new trees, meadows, and an attractive native plant palette. In fact, I've been doing this for about 35 years, and this is one of the most environmentally conscious developers I've ever worked with, and I think you'll see that as we walk through the presentation. In fact, their focus has been on being the best neighbor to the community, supporting and teaming with local businesses, and creating one of the most environmentally conscious developments of its kind, including a goal of becoming net zero on carbon emissions someday, as soon as possible. Regional infrastructure is always a challenge in areas like this, and one of the project's partners was instrumental in shepherding the Great American Outdoors Act through Washington to gain approval for approximately $10 billion in funding for infrastructure and recreational facilities, specifically for national parks. Again, they're one of the partners of the project. Our goal is to continue to be a friend and a partner to the community and to help bring infrastructure solutions to the region. Mr. Zimmerman expressed a great importance in that, and we wholeheartedly agree. We realize there may be some competing projects that want to delay us or to shrink the project down, but this scale fits well with the land and is truly needed to cover the high cost of a quality development. We're also aware of other hospitality projects that have been proposed and have been contentious for a number of reasons. And I know we've already heard some issues related to that. However, due to our location, as well as our design, I think you'll see this is a very difficult from the others. It's a complete apples and oranges comparison. In fact, it's just outright not fair to even compare this development to those other two developments. From the very beginning, we have been extremely transparent and have had significant outreach to the local communities, businesses, and especially environmental groups in order to understand and address the key issues. We feel like this is a bit unique for our project as well, and many folks have expressed appreciation to that. This includes outreach to Holland and Knight, and Mr. Zimmerman, the appellant. This also includes our neighbors, Oak Grove Cemetery, who we've worked closely with, and we've voluntarily offered to provide them sewer and water, which they have never had and have been trying to get for decades. They are supportive of the project, and I believe they have submitted a letter of support. We hope the county officials, as well as the local community, will support the redevelopment and restoration of the Scar property into something we can all be proud of. Now for our presentation, Jeff April will take it from here.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Jeff April, partner with Anacapa Architecture, with offices down in Santa Barbara and Portland, Oregon. We're familiar to the foothills. We've done some projects in the foothills that are similar in scope, similar in parcel size, similar in density. And I'd like to walk you through some of the design, the thinking, and the features of our project. Jaron? Jaron, can you go to the next page? Jaron, hear us?
Yeah, I'm on the I'm on the third slide already. It's not changing on your screen.
It's not changing on our screen. Why don't you stop sharing and reshare? Apologies, Board. Here we go. As you know, Groveland is on the western bank of the foothills, kind of right above the valley. Next slide. There just might be a delay. This was the oldest satellite image we could find, 1993, after the site had been grazed. You can see they already started constructing the gas station there. This grazing and grading of the property was the significant driver for all of the current environmental issues that are on site through the ephemeral drainages that were created when there were no tree or soil retention or soil on site to help keep water on site. Next slide. Right now, 2018, well, this was from 2018, you can see that it started to come back, but the main portion center feature of the site is still pretty bare, and it's predominantly like a lemonberry, manzanita, and ponderosa pines. Next slide. Currently on site, if you haven't been to the site, these are photos that illustrate the erosion and the current vegetation that is there. It's very young vegetation. Throughout the site, you can see some of the previously installed drainages that were haphazard, partially installed, and have worsened the erosion condition on the site. So what we were aspiring to do with this project is to create a holistic environmental rehabilitation of a site that was previously scarred and bring it into the future with a long-term vision of being a steward for that land. The overall site plan is concentrated in 3 primary areas. Along the highway, we're consolidating the parking, and there's some benefits to that. The major benefit of that is we will not have interior site circulation for vehicular traffic outside of emergency vehicles, and that allows for all of the parking to be placed along the highway. So in the case of emergency evacuation, you have a single point of access and you're not clogging up all of your interior circulation with a ton of cars. Secondly, or next in terms of the site plan, we've brought all of the units to the south, page west, and page east to remove them from Highway 120 to lower the visual mass bulk and scale of the project, and to also utilize a large main meadow as an orienting factor both for the site and for the overall experience of the guests there. It's important to know that this meadow is intended to be all fully native California grasses and wildflowers. There were comments related to its irrigation. It will take water in order to establish the meadow, but once the meadow is established, much like the foothills that you see around here, right now they're green, but in a couple months they'll be brown or gold. It's gonna have the same life cycle as all of those. Further, the planting plan is all native, fire-wise design with ponderosas that have the lowest sap flammability, blue oaks, coastal oaks, black oaks. Lastly, it was important that we distribute the main buildings on the site, which are all Firewise designed, that are metal roof, WUI, Wild Urban Interface, design CAL FIRE approved, ignition resistant materials throughout the site, again, to lower the visual impact, to lower the mass bulk and scale, and to make this feel like it's much lower visual impact going along the highway, to pull it, to reference the more agrarian barns that we see around here in the foothills. Next slide. These are some photo simulations that we put together for before and after. Please note that on all of these simulations, we're looking for a 20-year vision here. We understand that trees take a lot of time to grow, so we want to be forthright with that. Moving west on the Highway 120 before and after, the berm is important that you see here. The berm is serving to it's serving to help reduce vehicular noise, visual connection, and to help enhance some of the privacy of the site. Next slide. This is the existing entry. That's the existing gas station. We're using the existing entry through negotiations with Caltrans that's already there on site. You'll notice here that we are proposing to plant significant amounts of oaks and ponderosa pines along the highway. This is to help with vehicular screening of the parking lots. Next. This is this is just a spot on the site that's more northern, and this would be an experience where under the proposition, we'd have a point of interest. So here, it's just a very lightweight point of interest for the guests to gather. Next slide. This is the central meadow where the main lodge would be focused. The main lodge is agrarian in nature. It's meant to evoke the feeling of a barn. It's wood-sided, metal roofed, and very large connection to indoor-outdoor. It's, bedded into the hillside and meant for the native meadow to come right up to the edges of it and reduce as much hardscape to the maximum extent feasible. This is the pool area, the pool environment. The pool environment is meant, again, to be enshrouded in the meadow, very connection to nature. The whole point of this entire development is to really lean into the fact that people are coming to the Yosemite Valley to experience nature, and we want them to sort of blur that boundary no matter where you're coming from in every aspect of this development. In terms of the proposed community attributes, something that the project is doing is year-round operations. There are some that have been promoted, I think, under Canvas. That's not even a year-round operation, and this would be fully year-round with long-term goals of being a long-term steward of the property. It's currently scarred. It needs a lot of landscape. It needs a lot of care. It's highly visible, and it's going to be a huge reward for the community if it's well served and rehabilitated. It can be a venue for community events, weddings, parties. There is employee housing on site. I understand that there was a comment about employee housing before. On projects that we have been, there have been often less than one employee on the business structure that is being proposed by the operator on this project, and we're confident in that. It's a low impact, low mass bulk and scale development. It has full access to public utilities. I think that that's really important to know that we are in the Groveland Community Service District boundary, unlike some of the other proposed projects or some of the other existing projects. We're also in the emergency services boundary. Again, unlike some of the proposed and the currently existing projects, we're actually in the urban grid, well, the rural urban grid of Groveland and Big Oak Flat. All right, lastly, there's a yard stop on site and then improved drainage downhill. Back to Tim.
All right, Crystal, you're up. If we could allow Crystal in if she's not already in as a panelist. Crystal, do you want to address these things?
Can you hear me now? I unmuted myself.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, my name is Crystal Taylor and I'm with Padre Associates, and we prepared the mitigated negative declaration for the project. I'll be brief in my presentation and I'll be available to answer specific questions regarding the environmental analysis later on in the meeting. But upon completion of the initial study, we identified no significant impacts for the project. Therefore, an M&D was determined to be the appropriate CEQA document for the project. All project impacts will be mitigated to a less than significant impact. And the final M&D did not identify any new impacts, nor did it include any new mitigation from the public review draft M&D. Regarding biological resources, all impacts will be mitigated. The project will obtain federal and state permits from the agencies regarding wetland and waters impacts. And regarding oaks as well, a compensatory habitat creation and restoration plan and oak tree protection and replacement plan will be prepared and implemented. We've already touched on emergency services and that the project is within the GCSD and will pay the community facilities district fee. Let's see, I know we're running short on time. Regarding cumulative impacts, the M&D did evaluate 6 projects in comparison to the projects, and all impacts in the M&D have been mitigated to a level of insignificance and were not found to be cumulatively considerable. Let's see, with regards to public safety, the other projects are miles away, so it is not reasonable to assume that all hotel guests from the developments would be walking into the surrounding communities. Let's see, I have other notes on other resources that we can address during the question and answer period if you have any follow-up questions. So I'll pass it on to Mario to talk about transportation.
Thank you, Crystal. This is Mario with Wood Rogers. We prepared the traffic impact study for the project. And I just wanted to touch on a few quick items. First, I just wanted to reiterate that both the traffic study and the ISM&D found the project had no significant transportation impacts. And then just address a couple quick comments made by the appellant. There's a comment that the project takes a VMT credit for proximity to nearby land uses, but this is not correct. The project took a VMT credit for on-site land uses, such as the employee housing, but not for any off-site land uses, so it was conservative in that way. Also, there was a comment about the project potentially making fire evacuation worse, but the traffic impact study did analyze Highway 120 roadway segments near the project and found that even under the cumulative long-term plus project condition, those segments would operate at acceptable level service C and D, and therefore the project would not add a significant amount of congestion on the highway that would disrupt any potential evacuation efforts. Thank you.
So I'm going to skip a part that I wanted to talk about on kind of some exciting community benefits that were sent out to you today. And if you've had a chance to read those, maybe we can cover in Q&A. And I'm going to invite up John Kinsey, our CEQA attorney, because I think a few of those items that came up by the appellant would be important for you to hear a response.
Good afternoon. My name is John Kinsey with Wanger Jones Helsley. I've been litigating CEQA cases in Central California for almost 20 years, including many in some of the nearby mountain communities. I've defended and reviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of environmental documents over my career, and this is a strong one. I'm going to be the person who has to defend this document, and it is supported by technical reports. It imposes mitigation where appropriate. It is not legally deficient. Appellants, they want an EIR. And at the outset, that would set a bad precedent for site development permits and minor approvals, such as the ones that we're talking about here, that rarely come in front of the Board of Supervisors. More fundamentally, it wouldn't result in any different analysis. It would provide little, if any, additional information. Really, the only difference would be the assessment of alternatives, and I think we all can agree that the SCAR site needs to be redeveloped very quickly. More fun, and regardless, practically the only thing that it would create is delay and more paper. Now, we've reviewed the appeal, we've reviewed the arguments that were presented today. One thing I wanted to emphasize is that the arguments of counsel, as much as I would like to think different sometimes, do not constitute substantial evidence of a fair argument. So those simply are not relevant. We don't have expert reports here. All we have is the argument of counsel. in addition to some of the other argument that I heard today from a hotel operator. And I find it very interesting that a hotel operator is raising arguments about supposed negative effects of hotels. And in particular, that the ask is a reduction in the number of units. So I want you to take those arguments for what they're worth, because I think that those two facts are very compelling here. In addition, to address the very specific arguments, there really is no evidence at all that there would be more than 96 employees. That was specifically sized to meet the needs of this project. There's no evidence otherwise. With respect to fire, that was addressed in the negative declaration. And then with respect to the Groveland, or with the Groveland CSD, the other two projects that were mentioned in the comments were outside of the Groveland CSD. This project is much different. It's within the Groveland CSD, and the opinions of the Groveland CSD are entitled to deference, unlike the argument of competitors in council. Thank you.
Okay, let me look at my outline. All right, so at this time, I'm going to open it up to the board. We're going to ask questions if we have any of the appellant and the applicant. I am going to, just one more time, Quincy or Cody, could you just remind our board, so we keep it front and center, what we are looking at approving or denying today?
Thanks, Board Chair. So the project before you is a site development permit. This is a discretionary entitlement, which means that the county, it's different than a building permit, which is ministerial. We issue if you meet the codes and standards. So this is a discretionary permit. And I outlined it a little bit before, but in a nutshell, it's about the design layout, the utilities, the parking, and the traffic, things of those physical layout and design of the project. If you don't mind, if you'd allow, we'd be happy to run through some of the comments that were heard from all of the parties that just spoke.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
so
that might clear up some of our questions.
we'll just take a deep breath. We'll regroup here, and again, thank you for your patience for all of these presentations. It's really important that all the issues are heard by your board today. So Cody and I are going to go through some of these here, and if there's something that we did not cover, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we address that. So first of all, I just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about this project size of the Terra V project. As you know, that is undergoing litigation. No application to change the size of that project has come before the county. So the current approval is for the full project. The county has not reduced the project size in any way. So it still is its full approval as was done several years ago. Regarding planning for fire and emergency response, certainly the initial study does cover those two issues, as well as you heard our traffic consultant also discuss how it was covered in our technical study. There was an email brought up by the appellant, and was forwarded to us, and we've got copies on the back table, and I have given you a copy of it. Taking a really quick look at it, maybe it was a little outside the context of this project, because we certainly do evaluate projects against both the county emergency operations plan and any emergency evacuation plan that needs to be developed for the project. It's not really accurate to say that there's no basis for evacuation planning or for wildfire planning in the document. Also, there are a number of building codes and fire codes that address emergency evacuation and threats. Those are outlined in the conditions of approval for the project. The project's going to be required to apply with applicable California Fire Code and California Building Code, which again makes sure those life safety measures are incorporated. And the initial study itself does have a detailed outline about how the applicant envisions that evacuation would occur on the site. And as we also know, those are directed by our OES and our county sheriff. And also in the project record, we have details of communications between Community Development Department staff and our partners at County Fire. We work very closely with them when we are working on development review. They have provided conditions of approval of the project and did not identify any significant impacts that required mitigation. Lastly, do you have the response time, the slide on response times? That's okay. So lastly, I just wanted to make sure that your board understands when we're talking about response times in the environmental document, the question is, would the project have an impact and require a new or physically altered facility to, closer to the site, that could impact, that in order to maintain, let me read it to you. Let's just do that. That's better. Would the project result in substantial adverse physical impacts associated with the provision of new or physically altered government facilities, the need for new or physically altered, for which the construction of which can cause significant environmental impacts, and in order to maintain acceptable service ratios, response times, or other performance objectives. So the question under environmental law is asking us, not just if we need a new facility to maintain response times, but really the question is asking us if that facility is going to have an environmental impact. And so it's about the impact of the construction of a new facility. And so the environmental document did not find any significant impacts associated with that. Phew, let's see, let's go to the next one. With respect to population and housing, there were some questions regarding the number of employees that could be housed on the site. Just with some numbers that we have, of course, this is really getting into the operations of the resort itself, but in a peak season, our math shows us that there might be approximately 25 employees that might need off-site in the peak season. And I also just wanted to let your board know that we are currently processing modifications for existing permits at Rush Creek Lodge to add additional employee housing. Also, we're doing a modification to the Holcomb or Firefall Lodge project to add additional employee housing. Terra V, as it's proposed and approves, also has employee housing. We also have an application proposed for additional multifamily units in Groveland, and the applicant on that project has indicated that those units are directly for under canvas employees. They've said that they're working with under canvas to develop those. So we do have existing projects that are providing employee housing and some modifications as well. Let's see, I believe that Crystal from Padre talked about cumulative impacts. Mario talked a little bit about VMTs. VMTs are vehicle miles traveled. And so, as Mario said, they are taking credit for only on-site improvements for that. And again, pedestrian impacts has come up. The initial study did not identify any significant impacts related to pedestrian impacts, including the construction of a sidewalk from the project site to Groveland. That was not identified by any of our stakeholders or internally. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Cody, who can talk about adding material to an environmental document and when that requires a recirculation.
Thank you, Quincy. I just wanted to address one of the comments from the appellant regarding cumulative impacts, and there was a comment that there was a discussion of cumulative impacts that was in the initial study mitigated negative declaration that wasn't in the draft that was circulated publicly. Essentially, I took that to be an argument that it should have been recirculated. So just for the board's benefit, the recirculation of a mitigated negative declaration is required if there are substantial revisions that involve either one, the identification of a new avoidable significant impact that can be reduced to a less than significant level only through adoption of mitigation, or two, additions or revisions that involve a determination that originally proposed mitigation is not sufficient to reduce the project's impact to a less than significant level, and that additional mitigations or project revisions are necessary. So here, the additions to the draft document regarding cumulative impact did not involve either of those things. It didn't identify any significant impacts, cumulative impacts, so there were there's no discussion of mitigation either. Therefore, there was no recirculation that was required.
So those were the main points that we wanted to bring up in response to some of the comments that have been made to your board at this time. I'm checking with County Council, anything else that they want to add over there? I already have one here. So at that point, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kirk, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Sure. Yes, we'll take board questions. I am going to start with Supervisor Half since it is in her district. So Supervisor Half, I'll let you start.
Well, thank you goes to everyone for all of your reports to us, for the developer, for the opponents, for our staff, for everybody who's contributed to this board's understanding of what this project is and how it may or may not impact the community. I have a heart for the community itself, not developers necessarily. And I have one question of the developer that I'd like to ask, and that is, and we've talked about this before, and that is, do you have the capacity to reduce at all the number of units you have and still make this a viable project?
Thank you, Supervisor Hath. That's a great question, and it's obviously come up quite a bit. And as you may or may not recall, this project actually started as 200 units, or 200 keys, 200 lodging rooms. And what we did is we made a decision, and we really felt like we needed the 200, but we felt housing was important too. So we did two big changes. We dropped 25 units, which is about 12.5%, and then we added 96 employee housing units, plus some additional flex units if needed. We feel like the 175, we've gone over it around and around, and the developer feels like they're firm on that number, and it's a fair number, and it is consistent with general plan and zoning.
Okay, thank you. We're just going for questions right now.
Yeah, right now it's just questions. I would recommend we hold opinions or comments.
Okay, my next question is, I believe, for Quincy. So in pedestrian issues, is that primarily a Caltrans answer, or does the county staff weigh in on that as well? I just want to know, it's a highway, it's a state highway that runs through there, and so I'm just wondering, who makes the decision about pedestrian traffic?
Sure. So I'll take a stab, and then I've got my excellent planning manager, Dave Ruby, here if I leave anything out. So typically when we're going through a process and we have jurisdictional areas, I won't call them issues, but jurisdictional lines, we're going to work really closely with those agencies to make sure that the project addresses those needs. They are called a so in this case, it's Caltrans. They are called a responsible agency under the environmental law. So we engage with them very closely, because ultimately what will happen is this project developer will have to go to Caltrans for a permit. Therefore, Caltrans gets a say in the process at some level. I'm genericizing this. And so in terms of pedestrian improvements, the county's going to look in the area that we have jurisdiction under. Caltrans is going to look in the area that they have jurisdiction under, which is the state highway. We're also going to look at our county general plan. We're going to look at any other planning documents that Caltrans might have. So it's really a mix of information that provides input into the output of whether or not a pedestrian amenity is needed or not. We view that through the lens of the CEQA document. So we get all the data, and then we look at it through the CEQA question, and that's what we did here. And all of those inputs, looking through the lens, did not show that there would be any impacts to pedestrians that needed mitigation. So the short answer is we work with Caltrans, but since we're right next to each other, we work collaboratively.
I'm just wondering, I don't know if that answers my question. I'm trying to picture myself as a community member wondering who makes that decision? Who makes the decision for sidewalks or not? Isn't that Caltrans?
Yeah, generally on their own facilities, they'll make the decision whether sidewalks would be stipulated as a condition of development for a project. And certainly we sent them the notification and had numerous meetings with Caltrans to iron out design details, and never once did they said, oh yeah, by the way, we need you to provide sidewalks on this project, on its frontage, or to link it off-site, anything like that. But it certainly would have been their habit to add that as a point of discussion and as a point or a condition of approval for the project to move forward along their highway frontage, to be added to that, because they will address deficiencies, whether it's a design standard deficiency that needs to be addressed, or whether it's a capacity deficiency that needs to be addressed by the augmentation of the project, they let us know. And they're very, very diligent at letting us know what they want to see on their facility when a project develops alongside of it. So sidewalks never entered the conversation with our Caltrans partners. And honestly, you know, their design policy in their internal documents say that, okay, if there are existing sidewalks immediately adjacent to a project that has none, they will most likely ask for them, because that dovetails with their accessibility standards and their desire to have those complete streetscapes in place. But in the context of this site and this project, there is nothing to connect to. There are no existing sidewalks immediately adjacent. There are no existing sidewalks nearby. As it is their facility that we're talking about, we depend on them for the guidance, and they have not requested sidewalks, so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think as far as questions go, those are my two.
Supervisor Campbell.
Yeah, and I wanted to thank you, staff, and the applicant and the appellant. Obviously, a lot of thought has gone into this, and it's quite clear that a lot of effort has gone in to cover some of the key areas where we might have questions. And so many of the questions that I had initially have been answered, so good job, Quincy. One thing that I think was raised by, I forgot your name, sir, with Jeff. You mentioned about the drainage and erosion problems that this property has and has had for a long time. I've been walking around out there, 2 or 3 times over the course of the past couple of years for various reasons, and that's one of the first things that jumps out to you is it has severe erosion problems. And I'm quite confident in the plan here to address some of those. My question that I wasn't really able to find an answer to is related to the downstream portion of the erosion. This water, I understand more or less how you're going to duct it off the property, but into what is it going to go into a waterway? What are the downstream effects of that? Where does the water go once it drains off the property?
My name is Zach Garman. I'm a civil engineer working on the project. As part of the requirements for this project, the conditions, we have to address the downstream drainage and do a drainage study for that. Also, we're required to do on-site detention for the change in the surface areas. So not only will we be addressing the on-site drainage, but we will be doing a drainage study to see how it affects the downstream drainage areas and whether any mitigation is required.
So that's a study that needs to be done once you start doing more of the engineering?
Yes,
the site? Okay.
as part of the process.
Do you have a sense of where, is there, I'm not super familiar with the creeks and streams in that area. Is there a creek nearby there that would be the place where the drainage would go, or does that have to wait for a study?
Rattlesnake Creek, yeah. It is Rattlesnake Creek, yes. Yeah.
So Rattlesnake Creek would be the
drainage area.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And yeah, I guess that's it for now.
And jump back over here to Supervisor Brandon.
Great. And similarly, thank you to the applicant, the appellant, and staff. This is it's a lot of work to put together, and it's a lot of paper we end up gotten up here to go through. Some of my questions related, starting out with the housing benefits, and I agree with Supervisor Campbell. It was a thorough, I think, presentation on both sides that answered some of the questions there. I know that 75% of the estimated workforce is mitigated on-site with housing. I wanted to ask about the types of units. So are those single occupancy dwellings, or is there capacity to be able to handle families?
Yeah, I can address that. So they are proposing dorm-style buildings, but they would be able to accommodate families. Each one would have 2 rooms and then, you know, a little kitchen and living room area. And they can modify those to allow for families as well as single occupants that would share a room with someone.
Okay, and is the modification combining 2 individual rooms to then be a double? What I'm saying is, would that modification then reduce the number of rooms that are available?
No, so it's up to 96 employees. 2-story building will include 24 rooms. So they'll configure those to be able to accommodate 2 employees, singles or a couple. It includes a kitchenette, mini fridge, 2-burner electric stovetop, and a sink. They have access to group bathrooms and laundry rooms.
Okay. Let me see. This is a question just about looking to meet our RHNA requirements. Does this adjust in any way our regional housing needs for the county? And what's in that assessment or impact our ability to hit that?
That's a really good question. So what we would do is we provide an annual housing progress report to HCD, Housing Community Development. We just turned that in. And that report is a large Excel spreadsheet, and we go through all of the building permits that have been issued, and that's how they track our RHNA. So we do it for, actually not just building permits, we do it for project approvals. So we would be communicating to the state in these approvals, these various components, and the state will assign them to our RHNA as they do in their formula, and we'll see what happens when we get our next RHNA in about 2 or 3 years. So we do communicate the construction of all of our units in the county to the state for that purpose.
And so to clarify, we would get credit towards the RHNA for the 75%. Would we be penalized for the 25% that is not housed there for any type of population growth from employees?
So Supervisor Brandon, I don't know exactly how HCD runs their formula, so I couldn't say that, I couldn't say either way. All I know is that we'll provide that information to them, and it's more than just they don't just subtract the number of units you've constructed from your next year's RHNA. There's other growth factors, other factors that go into it. So I don't know how it would affect our RHNA that would come out, and RHNA being Regional Housing Needs Assessment from HCD.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm throwing around acronyms and stuff. Picking up bad habits. One question I want to also ask was about, the hospitality industry is obviously very important to our county economy, but many of the jobs that are created with that tend to be on the lower side of income. I want to ask if there's an affordable requirement of some kind for those units that are on the property, or they're a condition of employment, or is that going to be market rate housing?
I'm going to have if it's all right with you, have the applicant answer that question.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Brandon. Good questions. So this, I just want to remind the group that this is a voluntary kind of give for the employee housing, if you will. And so, in a sense, it's better than low income or affordable because we are providing it complementary to those staff workers. And so it's, I would think it would help your RHNA numbers, quite frankly. We work with RHNA quite a bit. But does that answer your question?
Maybe. So that would be, if they're employed, they then have free housing. They would not be charged rent?
Right, that's my understanding.
Okay, great. That's what I was wondering, if it was charged rent for the property on site or the housing on site. That does answer my question.
And then if I could add to part of your other question, the configuration too allows for couples, and we've got some scenarios that allow for families too. And in the other development that the same developer has, they've done the same thing and are providing a similar housing, and it's been effective. So,
okay, great, thank you. So moving on a little bit. As I mentioned, the state had a 20% reduction, but it wasn't necessarily to that region for water conservation. I wanted to ask specifically if there was, as we've seen with some of the other hospitality projects, a gray water recycling system for landscaping, and also looking at that as kind of a shaded fuel break area, looking at the water and fire risk out of the staff or the applicant. Any on-site gray water recycling?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the questions. Right now, as designed, there would be rainwater collection, but there's no gray water from sinks or from showers. Those take tanks and filtration. And then as it relates to water fixtures, everything would be required or meet the requirements of Cal Green, so everything is low flow. And then again, as stated, the main landscaping of the site is intended to be 100% native, and it's going to ebb and flow with the seasons. It will take water to establish, but once established, it will be exactly like all the landscaping you see here in the foothills along the 120.
Okay, and just to follow up on that too, want to ask, even though it may not require water, one thing that's been looked at in a lot of other areas have been, we got very dry summers. When the native plants dry out, it's a fire risk, a lot of maintenance. Is there any proposal of trying to do more or less keeping it green during the fire season using some type of water source? I'm known for really bad questions, so please bear with me.
There will be an irrigation system that's installed on site in order to establish the meadow. To run it year round, we want to be respectful and understanding that we do not want to be wasteful with water. The irrigation would probably be more suited less for the meadow, which it doesn't have as high flammability or as dramatic flammability as trees do. But in the long run, if the community and the operators felt like it was necessary to keep a twice a week irrigation schedule so that the soil content had some moisture in it rather than being bone dry, I think that's something that's an operational decision. And there will be facilities that can allow for that. But again, being very respectful to the amount of water that the whole project is intended to use.
Okay, and to staff, would we expect that any water used for that purpose in the fire seasons would impact in any way the CEQA analysis of this? Any impacts on the water system? I guess I'm asking if that was accounted for in GCSD's analysis.
I think the way to answer that question, Supervisor Brandon, is that they're required to have fire flow on site at a certain level, certain amount for a certain period of time. So any water use that is for landscaping or for just general use of the hotel, they're always required to have a reserve for fire flow, firefighting capabilities.
Okay.
I think that's the answer to your question.
Okay, sure. Thank you. And I was very happy to see the water tank as well, 180,000 gallons on site as well. I want to ask if there was any for an emergency or for power for fire on site, either power generation, battery backup technology, or installed generator in case of an emergency?
This is Jeff from ANACAP again. You are correct. There will be emergency service generators that would function for emergency lighting. It would function any booster pumps needed for fire suppression systems. And there will be battery backup for the solar components that are installed on the lodge.
That's great. Thank you. Let's see. There was one thing mentioned by the appellant. So we have the Yards bus stop that is on the site, but the potential of it, I looked it up around the Horn, great brewery, not in my district, kind of wish it was. They're really wonderful. That's 1.5 miles. That's not a very safe walking or pedestrian route. But people being people may end up potentially walking, or at least is a concern of mine. One thing that was brought up was a potential shuttle service into the local township. I wanted to ask about that decision, if there is something planned for that, support the local economy and avoid any hairy pedestrian situations.
Yes, Supervisor Brandon, and we've got some other exciting things we've added, as I mentioned before. The shuttle we're offering a minimum of a 10-person shuttle van. And depending on demand, of course, we're a service company, and so we want to take care of the guests, and so that can grow with the demand. And that shuttle is meant to be local, Groveland, Big Oak Flats. A lot of times it'll be, lunch, dinner, other local spots. And so we've set it up right now as a time frame we anticipate being about, 11 to 8 p.m. Somewhere in there is kind of the sweet spot. And then that helps to address the idea of a sidewalk or how pedestrians might get around safely. Typical of like a concierge type service. You can think of it that way.
Okay. And is that in any type of trust but verify writing with a condition of approval that there would be a regular shuttle service to Groveland or et cetera?
So we have provided, after talking with the community at length and many, many meetings with different groups and hearing a lot of responses, as I said, we have a very responsible, proactive developer owner. And what we have done is provide in writing and for the record, the things that we are offering as what we call additional community benefits. We already had quite a few community benefits. Even employee housing, I would say, is one of the biggest. And that employee housing, I probably should have said before, that's several $1 million, and one of the biggest reasons that we need to make sure we can have the room count that we have. But what we've included is, so the shuttle, as I mentioned, and that's in writing, and that we expect you to put that in as part of the conditions of approval that you are, you have the discretion to add. And so we're willingly accepting those, and we've given you the written portion so that you can see how that's worded. And it's meant to be measurable so that, and very specific, so you can see what we're offering and it's not, kind of vague or wishy-washy. That also includes all the guest and employee areas will have Energy Star rated appliances, so that really helps with impacts to GHG and other items, just overall good environmentally. The solar, we're offering 70%. So within the main lodge building, that's where most of the power usage is. We're going to put a solar system in place that'll cover at least 70% of that demand.
It's great. You're jumping ahead to all my questions.
What? Oh, sorry if I'm
No,
overstepping.
it's good. No, please keep going.
This is probably the biggest, and I think this is pretty exciting, is the developer offered in kind of hearing things and talking with Mr. Zimmerman and his partner, and we asked, what's the biggest issue you have? And he said emergency services. And Supervisor Half and I have discussed this a bit, and this developer has been very proactive on public-private partnerships, and they're saying, look, this is a big issue. This isn't just the county. This isn't just private developers. This is something we need to kind of team up on. And we are willing to initiate that effort and kind of start those discussions a little more formally. And to, as a fair share contribution, what we're saying is that we'll kick that effort off with donating a rapid response vehicle, which is something that the Groveland Community Services District has wanted for some time. And this will really help supplement the current emergency services in the situation with the ambulance service that the county offers now. This would be, we're offering $120,000 toward that rapid response vehicle. And so that really creates some much needed redundancy to emergency services. And then we're gonna, kind of start those discussions for a public-private, approach to some of these big needs.
Great, thank you. I want to also ask about hookups in the parking lot. We are a ZEV regional leader, but this is going to be an entirely visiting population. It's reasonable to expect there's potentially going to be a lot of electric vehicles coming up in a few years. What percentage of them will be hooked up for ZEV chargers, and which ones would be, I guess, able to have them built later on?
Great. Also in that letter, what we've proposed is one fast charging station, and then 10% of the parking spaces would be equipped with EV charging devices, and those would be installed immediately when the project is built. In addition, 15% additional of the parking spaces will be wired for future EV charging as the demand is there.
Okay, great, thank you. And we already covered the Cal Green. One other thing coming up too with SB 1383, there's a restaurant with the project. We also have in our general plan a commitment to trying to encourage composting and such with food waste and food recycling. Is there something to do on site, more or less composting?
I'm going to interject real quick. Do you have any questions that might change how you vote on the site development permit? Because I don't see an end in sight to your questions.
I think the relevance to my question is up to me to determine. So
okay, but this is about a site development permit.
Yeah.
So these little details, are they gonna change the way you vote?
Are you saying they don't matter?
I'm,
I
I would
think I'm
like-
just
I would
asking
like
for my
in
time,
the-
but,
in the
Mr.
interest-
Chairman, I was actually on my last question.
Great,
If that
thank you.
eases your concerns.
in the interest of time, thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. So my last question on that is if there's any food recycling or on-site composting happening with the food facilities, as we're kind of a new expectation thrown at us very recently by the state.
That's a good idea. And we're quite a ways away from that, and that's gonna be an operations question. I don't know the answer to that, but again, the group is very proactive, and it sounds like a great idea and certainly something that they would consider in the operations group. We do have someone from operations on the phone that we could probably pull over and answer if that's important, but I think they'd probably say the same thing. Hey, that's a good idea. We'll look into that. And if it's reasonably feasible, for sure.
That's great. And that's coming down the pipeline anyway, so it's probably gonna be Monday. I did have actually one last question, and I promise. So in the construction of this, I want to ask if there's going to be a first offer to local or labor workforce to be able to build the project, or if most of the construction workers are probably coming from out of area.
So glad you brought that up. Yes, I mean, for us, that's by far the most efficient approach. And so we prefer to bring in local general contractors if available even, and in the trades, and that's just a much more cost-effective approach to us. And there's always the challenge of where do those folks stay? Where do the construction workers stay? And that was partially why we had set up kind of this phase 1, phase 2, because we thought, well, we need regulatory permits that only relate to phase 2. And phase 1 has employee housing, which if we can do the phase 1, get the employee housing built, use that for construction workers to build the rest of the project, that's kind of a great, win-win. So.
Great. And then just to follow up the same question on that, does that mean that there will be a first offer to try and hire local?
Yes, I believe we could commit to that.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a win-win for both of us.
Thank you so much.
Supervisor Goldenberg.
Okay, so I have a few questions to staff, the appellant as well as the applicant. For staff, we'll start there. Didn't catch it in my notes, the initial appeal letter date, March, and I didn't hear the actual date.
March 28th.
Thank you. Don't have I'm sorry. Just confirming that because it was brought up in discussions, I believe by the appellant, the number of rooms of Terra V have not yet been decided. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That is correct, Supervisor Goldenberg. There is an existing approval that has what the board already approved. There are ongoing discussions in the course of the litigation, but there's no that litigation is ongoing. So there's been no established change.
Okay, good. I think my final question for staff would be, and I was intrigued by Supervisor Brandon because it's an area that I'm very interested in. Electrical charging stations, were they part of the process of, looking at the site development permit? Obviously, it's a huge area and it's probably going to grow, so.
Yeah, so electric charging stations, they're, I believe, required as a part of our building code. And so actually, the applicant had said they were going to do a certain percentage of their site that would be charging, and then some that were plumb for it. I've just got a quick question into Brian Bell to get that percentage from the building code to make sure that at a minimum, they'll be required to do that. So I'm not answering your question yet.
Yeah,
I'm going to get you that number, though.
That's good. I thought I heard the applicant state one.
Yeah, it
was
looks like
some-
they're
had some
proposing
concern.
some, as a part of their project, some commitment to a certain percentage, and I'm just gonna give you guys what the building code would already require, then
Sure.
we can sort of compare where we're at.
Very good and appreciated. I think I just had one, let me see here. one, maybe two questions for the appellant. Are they still on board to respond? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Just a quick question, because, Lee, we're talking about a lot of rooms here, different projects, recent projects, Jervy, under Canvas, now looking at Yonder. Just would like to get an answer, how many rooms you have at Evergreen and Rush Creek currently?
Sure. Evergreen's 100 years old now and was built with 18 rooms originally, was expanded to 66 rooms in 2003, and was expanded to 88 rooms in 2009.
Okay, so
Rush Creek, again, its entitlements in 87, and it was approved at 143 rooms before we ever actually were involved. And then the person who had gone through the approval sold the land to us, and we built it for 143.
So I'm sorry, I thought I heard 88 for Evergreen, and did you say 122 for Rush Creek?
143.
143, okay. So a bit over
And
200.
yep, those were the two larger additions to the community over the last 15 years or so. I should point out now that I think the county is already aware that there is actually a signed agreement with Terra V. Maybe it's still wending its way through the county, but I believe the county is aware that that agreement is in place, and Terra V has asked the county for their consent on that agreement. So there's a bit of confusion about that, I believe.
Yep, no, understand.
That
We'll,
98 rooms for Terra V.
when that's finalized, it'll be finalized. So I appreciate your mention. I know it's been a topic of discussion, certainly. And just a quick side note, I asked those questions just based on when we're talking about the overall rooms and various evacuation procedures and everything else. So,
sure.
So for the applicant, question, please. Appears to be a little bit potential, not quite sure where we sit with this. How many employees are we talking?
So the operator has stated that they believe it'll be about 125 employees in the peak.
Okay.
And understanding that this is a different type of property and project than Rush Creek and Evergreen and certain other properties too. So this is based on other property that they own and operate with similar challenges and remoteness and levels of service.
Okay, because I heard 48 rooms being set aside for employee housing to satisfy 96 employees. So we're a little bit off on the numbers as far as, and I know it was a concern of Supervisor Brandon, housing. We've got severe housing problems in the county. So, but I appreciate your clarification.
Certainly.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have now, but I will have definitely comments in other areas, but we were limited to questions first.
Okay, I have just a few questions. I'm going to try and do it in 3 minutes or less. Well, I asked the first one, Chief or Assistant Chief Murphy, would you come up? Because I'll have a question on CAL FIRE here in a second. First one is, Quincy, this is to you, because again, I understand the employee housing isn't required. It's something that they're bringing to the table. Is that part of the condition today? So if we approve this project today, can they go back and 6 months, a year down the road and decide, hey, we're going to pull that element? Or is it locked in after today?
It's locked in. It's a part of their project description.
Okay. And then it was brought up, fire is a big issue up the 120 corridor. And in case there's confusion, I just want to be clear to myself. I'm going to look to County Council. The TOT increased from 10 to 12%, which was a 2% extra. But it wasn't a special tax. It was specifically a general tax, TOT. So it goes to the general fund. So we can't, I'm just confirming, we can't say any revenue that comes from this project or any other project currently, we can't dedicate those revenues, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then my other question, I had some water questions about the drought, but that was all covered. Again, back to the fire thing. I understand up the Highway 120 corridor, there's definitely some fire concerns, and our board's been talking about that, and there's some long-term planning. But locally, for this area, the SCAR area, Groveland, Big Oak Flat, what are our fire services specifically for this development? Should it go in?
Good afternoon, Andy Murphy, Assistant Fire Chief for County Fire and CAL FIRE. And Groveland Fire also. And so up in that area, just about 1.3 miles from this site is the CAL FIRE Groveland Station, which is funded as Amador, or funded by the county in the wintertime, and then CAL FIRE, the state of California, during the summer. At peak staffing during the height of fire season, there's 2 engines there with 3 personnel. And then in the wintertime, it's 1 engine with a minimum of 2 personnel. And then 1 mile up, 1.3 miles up the highway on Highway 120 in Groveland is the Groveland Community Services District Fire Station. Both of those locations, those stations have about a 4-minute response time to this location. The Groveland Community Service District engine is also staffed with 2 personnel year-round, a minimum of 2 personnel year-round. And then up the highway a little bit is the Forest Service at Smith Station.
Okay, so we got two within about 2 miles for this area. Okay, I just want to confirm. All right, thank you. And then I have one question for the appellant and one for the applicant. Confirming there is no, for the applicant, there's no camping sites, correct? Just housing, just what we see. Okay, that's fine. And then for the appellant, is there camping sites on Evergreen as well? Is that included in numbers, or were your numbers just the housing?
That's just the housing, and there are another group of like 12 or 15 campsites or something.
Okay. Okay. All right. I don't have any additional questions. We are going to go to public comment.
Supervisor,
do I need
can I just clarify something on the Terra V issue, because I know it keeps being brought up. There is no confusion on the county's part. The county is aware that there's a private settlement agreement between the developer applicants and the opponents. However, the lawsuit's not been dismissed, and there is no final county action to approve anything in that settlement agreement.
Okay.
We're obviously having lots of discussions about it, but there's no final county approval.
So just based on that, why is that even part of this
It
conversation?
keeps being brought up because there's lots of comparisons. For instance, when you look at
Okay.
what some of the opponents have written, they would like this project to potentially be reduced in size, similar, equivalent to what the Terra V revised project in the settlement agreement. So I just wanted to clarify for the public listening, it's not final yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right, with that being said, we are going to open it up to public comment. So I will look to the room if there's any comment on this item. Yes, come on up to the podium. And you have 3 minutes, so. And after 2 minutes, you'll hear a beep, and that means you have 1 minute left.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair Kirk and supervisors, and thank you, county staff. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shirley Horn. I am the owner of the commercial property at 17820 State Highway 120, also known as Around the Horn Brewing Company. My family took a huge risk in buying that building and putting our new business on that site. And the risk was, will the Big Oak Flat area and Groveland, will the county continue to pay attention to and focus more resources and efforts on the Highway 120 corridor? We had faith when we decided to do that, our business there, that we would have the infrastructure and services available to us, and we believe that we do. And we have a lot of faith that we will continue to have improved infrastructure and services down in Big Oak Flat, and indeed somehow bridge this no man's land between Big Oak Flat and Groveland. The SCAR has been, is one of the things that makes that big no man's land exist. It's ugly, it looks terrible. You know, it does not attract visitors. It's certainly very detracting. We've been very impressed with this Yonder team's efforts to engage the community, to talk to the business owners, to really understand what the issues are, and to offer suggestions and solutions. And they made a lot of changes to the initial plans based on that feedback. And that's very impressive. And we think it's unprecedented actually in our area. We'd like to see more of that happen. We believe that this team has been really sensitive by putting together a plan that's going to be appropriate thematically, environmentally, and for our area that's going to, again, it's going to attract rather than detract. You know, this has been a very ugly property for a very, very long time. And we are very hopeful that this project will go through because we think it's going to bring up the look and feel and the availability of new services and new focus from the county on our area. And we think that just having the lodging there, the more lodging rooms up on the hill is going to attract and retain visitors so that they spend their money up on the hill rather than coming back downhill. Sorry to the other district's supervisors about that, but we kind of like to keep it up on the hill if we can. So basically the family of the Horn and around the Horn Brewing Company, we support this. We think this is a great team. We think this is a great plan, and we really do hope that you approve it. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Shirley. Any other public comment in the room? I see one walking, and we have 4 on Zoom as of right now. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon, John Buckley, CSERC. The project before you today is the third large lodging development project proposed for the Highway 120 corridor. The 2 previous were both litigated by our center and others because the county chose not to ensure that the CEQA analysis accurately assessed impacts and provided necessary mitigation. The county and consultants often appear to put blinders on when it comes to significant impacts instead of honestly admitting the need for mitigation to lessen the harm. And just 2 examples, with this project, despite general plan objectives to reduce county greenhouse gas emissions to comply with state goals, the planning consultants and your staff judge that no mitigation is needed because this project's added emissions only reached 97% of a level where magically it's only at 100% or mitigation suddenly matters. That makes no sense. Similarly, consultants and county staff incorrectly claim that no mitigation is supposedly needed for any significant traffic effects, yet this project with the other listed cumulative projects will add 3,146 daily trips with 1 additional vehicle going past on the highway every 10 seconds during peak hours. But unlike the other 2 projects that we litigated and opposed, the applicants in this project have done everything the county has requested and much, much more. They responded to public comments by getting rid of guest unit fire pits. They've increased parking. They voluntarily added the employee housing, a significant change, and they've designed the project with sensitivity for the eroded site. They've partnered with GCSD for public water and sewer, and they've also provided funding to help expand the district's fire response capacity and emergency services, as they've mentioned today. For years, our center has pointed to this particular site as the best location if new development was planned. The applicants have committed to making the site attractive instead of a recovering eyesore. And now, in response to concerns, even though the county is not requiring it, the applicants are voluntarily mitigating for greenhouse gas emissions by committing to purchase Energy Star appliances, providing solar and charging stations, and by reducing traffic trips by providing a shuttle option for guests. CSERC could continue to point out the problems with the county not requiring sufficient mitigation. But in this case, the applicants have stepped up and have responsibly gone above and beyond the minimum required concerns, especially when it comes to additional measures that have been described today. On behalf of our center, based on the additional voluntary commitments and all the changes they've made that are now agreed to by the applicants, I believe that the project now deserves board approval. And whether or not there is a legal ability to lock in TOT allocations, I strongly agree with the appellants that a significant portion of TOT needs to be narrowly applied to this area to deal with emergency services where the funding is coming from. Please do consider it as a way to resolve concerns. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. I knew you were on the last sentence, so I didn't want to cut you off. Is there any other comment in the room? And there is.
Hello, it's me again. You might know me from such exciting things as the Terra V appeal, the Under Canvas appeal. I'm here, Mary Beth Campbell, representing Save Sawmill Mountain. I'm here because it feels like we're looking at another development that feels not completely thought out in context of cumulative impacts. I've been beating the drum of cumulative impacts since Terra V and Under Canvas first came, and then along with the Berkeley Camp expansion, which by the way looks kind of like a rustic Daly City. If you haven't been there lately, it's quite huge. And while they were all approved, they were reduced in size, and that's my point. I think this is a more appropriate location for a hotel like this, but I think the size is too big. It should be probably 100 rooms or less. It is the largest project in our county, and I feel like it's on its way for approval, but without considering the impacts of this large number of influx of people in our very small community. In regards to a lot of things, but particularly what I want to talk about is fire safety and evacuation. The county appears to be paying lip service to this, to fire safety and evacuation. The item has been brushed over when it came to Terra V, when it came to Under Canvas, by referring to codes and mitigations and phrases such as no significant impact can be found. The reality is that any project creates an impact, whether it says it on paper or whether some expert says it or not. And there can be a myriad of codes and legal phrases that can make it feel okay to look the other way, which I believe happened with Under Canvas and Terra V. That's the way it works, I get it, and it looks like this project is going to be approved. But I'm hoping when it comes to approving this project that we will think really thoughtfully about the size and understand that more people equals more impact. It's a very simple equation. 175 rooms is different than 100 rooms, except for the developer. That's a lot different for them. And this developer had the phrase that he said that he thought that this fit well with the land, that this project fits well with the land. And I would wonder, well, yes, it might fit well with the land, but does it fit well with the community? That's the question I have. This 2-lane road will not sustain or accommodate the communities and the services that are here, the recreational service in the case of an evacuation. The mock fire was an example of this and evidence of this. I was here, I know, and this was not even a catastrophic or fast-moving fire. This was one that we kind of could take our time. It's not an exaggeration to say that we could be another Paradise or any of the other number of communities that have been wiped off the map in the last 2 summers here. So I was concerned when Terra V and Under Canvas came, but now I'm fearful with this one because it's a large project and we have a 2-lane road to get us out. And I was here both for the rim fire and the mock fire. And we are not immune just because we've had the rim fire. That doesn't stop it. Another one can come. So I would hope that if you approve this project, which it feels like you will, that you would seriously consider reducing the number of rooms because that is what's going to help our community be safer. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Is there any more public comment in the room? Not seeing any, we're gonna go to Zoom. Thumbs up when you're good.
Hello, it's Tom Hernandez. Can you hear me?
Yes, Hernandez, we can hear you. You're on.
Thank you so much. A lot of interesting conversation here. I got to give credit to the developer. They did put a lot of foresight into it. However, if I step back, I am a resident of Pine Mountain Lake. I've seen this small community continue to develop, and I realize development is just part of the process. However, we look at the amount of developments that are coming through, and again, it's been mentioned over and over through each of these developments. We have a 2-lane road. Folks, if you're going to add additional cars, we are just asking for disaster to take place. Again, a 2-lane road, and you've got a lot of foreigners, city folks that don't even know what to do when it snows and how to drive in it. And then again, if you look at any holiday, I as a resident have a heck of a time just turning right onto Highway 120 to go to the gas station because it's bumper to bumper. And if the county thinks back, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, why did we have to put a traffic light at the one-way 120? Because prior to that, you had to have a police officer directing traffic because there's too much traffic. And again, looking at it from a Yosemite perspective, those folks are already booked up. They're taking day pass reservations. Where are these people going to go? What are they going to do? I mean, realistically, we are courting disaster. You know, the other way I look at it as well, you know, if we look at the combined traffic flow of all the developments, folks, without those developments, we've already got traffic jams. So my question is, why don't we have some of the county supervisors sit here during the holiday and you can physically see what is happening? The problem is you're in one location, you live in reality in the other one. Granted, you've got to get TOT, you've got to pay for services, but you got to think this thing through. Paradise, you saw what happened. Anybody that witnessed the video and correspondence on it, within 30 minutes, the disaster had taken place. That's exactly what we're going to do here. And I really feel bad because there's a lot of elderly people in Pine Mountain Lake. Again, a lot of people that are going to be tourists. And to take that a step further, without walkways, you're going to have people riding bicycles. That's just reality. There are no street lights. There are no sidewalks. Try walking it, and you'll find areas where you've got 18, 16 inches between the white line and the side of the street. So again, as has been mentioned multiple times, the safety, the fire, none of that is going to mean anything. When a disaster takes place, you're going to see it. You're going to have to sleep at night and think about the decisions that you're making here. So I hope you do it wisely. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, hi. This is Janice Kwiatkowski, resident of Groveland. I wanted to point out that the location, one of the supervisors asked how far away Rush Creek and Evergreen Lodge was from GCSD. And the fire chief said, well, it's 20 miles, 22 miles. But it takes 29 minutes to get from GCSD to Rush Creek, and it takes 44 minutes to get to Evergreen Lodge. And those times are in a vehicle, an automobile, not a fire truck. So where these locations, mileage-wise, may not seem too far, when you send a fire truck out and it takes 45 minutes to get there, then it's going to take 45 minutes to get back, and then they're going to do whatever they need to do while they're there. Residents of Groveland and Big Oak Flat are without that fire truck. So I know the county is working on something to help relieve some of that issues. However, when more people are in this location, more services are going to be needed. And you can't plan. Somebody mentioned that the traffic wasn't mitigated enough to wasn't going to cause an issue if there's more people visiting up here. You can't go by how many cars go through the little light or run across the road and trigger the count to go up. You have to plan for the future. And if it may not seem that it's going to mitigate or cause issues now, when you add another 600 people up here a day, every day of the spring and summer and fall, it's going to add up. It's going to make a difference. And when we're talking about the fire, you can't go by what happened in the past. The mock fire, yes, we got out of here on time, but that was a little bitty fire off of the hill. That wasn't uphill from us. That didn't include all the people that had to come through Groveland and Big Oak Flat to get out of the area. So please take all of that into consideration when you're making your decisions today. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. How many more do we have on Zoom?
Hello?
Hello, you're on with the board.
Okay, my name is Tom King. I live in Pine Mountain Lake, and I have several concerns about all this. First of all, I would like to thank you, Jared, for the very thoughtful and pertinent questions. And I'm actually appalled that the chairman tried to interrupt those questions because I find those were some of the best part of this whole meeting. Anyway, to the topic. My concerns are first and foremost, GSD's approval of this project based on quote unquote planned improvements. I don't think that any project should be approved based on planned improvements. Those plans, when you look at the details, include applying for grants that they hope to achieve, but if they don't, where are we at? As it is right now, during the summer months here in PML, when the tourist season is at its height, which it would be with this addition, the sewer treatment plant stinks like heck to people that live here. So unless or until that plant is improved, this will make it more common, more intense, and more frequent that we have to endure this horrible stench that comes from the overloaded existing system. So that's my personal biggest concern. But there were a lot of other things that I heard during this conversation that brought my attention. And among them are the required shuttles. I think for the approval of this project, the shuttles should be required, not just suggested. There should be a minimum of 4 charging stations of fast charge, not just the slow ones. There should be at least twice the housing and at least 10 that would accommodate families, because 48 units for 125 employees is not going to cut it. And they're expecting people to double up. Well, a lot of people aren't going to want to double up. I also agree that the scope is ridiculous and should be reduced to less than 100 units. I also think that the drainage needs to be addressed. And I would say if you're going to approve this project, which given the ignoring all of us that spoke against the previous projects, I'm considering this a given. At least 1, require shuttles, not just be optional. 2, require a minimum of 4 changing stations. 3, require at least double the housing with at least some family units. And require a drainage plan in advance. Require an EIR report in advance, and reduce it to less than 100 units. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Tom. Hello, you're on with the board.
My name is Mary Curtis, and I am the owner of this storied property, which I have had since 2006, when my late husband and I foreclosed on a bad loan made to the prior owners. During that foreclosure, I inherited a developer and a set of plans that called for 2 hotels, a bunch of a gas station, a bunch of fast food restaurants, a water park, and the project that was envisioned was a concrete jungle. It was 7 years of trying to fight that battle before I realized, and I was told by the community, that this is just not what they wanted, that they wanted to see the night stars and they wanted to have the natural surround preserved in some way for the benefit of the community. And yet we had a thing called the scar with deep erosion, and erosion that would only get worse over time. I pulled the plug in 2014, and it has taken me this long to come back to you with a developer that I have absolute faith in to bring the community what it asked for, namely a restoration of a beautiful piece of property that's been scarred, and a right-sized project for hospitality that has the benefit of being within the utility services district. If you think about it and do the math, 5 units are being offered per acre. I don't know a hotel that runs at that low density. 5 units per acre is less than some tract housing. So I feel that this is a reasonable project. I'm struck by the natural vegetation, the indigenous vegetation, which is so important to all kinds of safety. We have talked quite a bit about honoring the beautiful historic cemetery. And one of the things I did when we foreclosed on this property, or actually before then, when we made the loan, is I met with then Supervisor Mark Thornton, who told me this community is not a wealthy community. We need jobs, we need housing, low-income housing, and anything you do on this property needs to honor the cemetery. Well, I feel like we're honoring all of those requests and being good citizens along the way. So needless to say, I'm supportive, and I applaud the supervisors who support this kind of restoration at what I was told was one of the largest tracts of developable land in the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Hello?
Yes, you're on with the board.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Dwight Folleen. I'm a resident of Groveland, also with the Groveland Trailheads. We're building a mountain bike destination trail system in the Stanislaus National Forest in the Groveland Ranger District. I have a true appreciation for our land. I'm out there quite a bit in the forest building land, building the trails, looking at how to make things natural. I really have appreciation for this project, to what they're doing with the land there. That scar is an erosion nightmare. We're all aware of that, and I just believe something needs to be done there. And this project seems to take a lot of that environmental stuff and want to deal with it. So I'm very much in support of this project, and that's all I needed to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dwight. Hello, you're on with the board.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Robert Forzande. I'm an attorney that represents several concerned businesses in the community, both in the immediate and the more further reaching out community. I've taken a look at the mitigated negative declaration, and it seems like it pays lip service, and I think we've heard it from some of the prior speakers as well, that pays lip service to several topics. But most importantly, I think first is the wildfire issue. We all know we're no stranger to these wildfire problems, and there is no effort in the analysis to take that into consideration. It's just, yes, it's a sensitive fire zone, but that's it. There's no community benefit, credits or anything taken to take into account the additional fire resources that'll be needed to accommodate a project like this. And there's also no discussion about improving infrastructure in the area to handle the additional use that this project would bring upon it and the significant extra fire hazards. Additionally, I thought most interesting was the assumption that the construction workers would live in tents. I found that to be very peculiar. Either the developer was, misleading the community development department, or the community development department was just glossing it over because they wanted to find a way to approve this project. But the idea that tradespeople were going to live in tents while they build this project, I just find to be laughable. Similarly, the same for the employment housing. The employee housing, the idea that, they first started with 60, and I think tonight we heard that there might be 120 employees. Again, practice and reality doesn't jive with that. So I believe that part of the analysis is also flawed and missing detail. And if the accurate numbers were actually provided, there will not be sufficient housing to house the employees on site. And then there'll be an impact to the greater community as people who work at this location will try to find housing in the already scarce housing market, affordable housing market that is in the greater area adjacent to this site and in the further outlying areas. So the impact to the community, to affordable housing, will be detrimentally impacted by this project. And again, it seems like the MND paid no real attention to this issue. So I would strongly urge that the board ask the developer to go back, come up with a community benefits agreement to mitigate some of these detrimental impacts to the community. Thank you for your time this evening.
All right, thank you, Robert, for your comments. Good. All right, you're on with the board.
Hi, my name is Joe Powell, and I've been a full-time resident of Pine Mountain Lake in Groveland for over 32 years. And I really share some of the same concerns that have been voiced by the previous speakers. Obviously, we're seeing a severe impact with housing, especially in our area, especially employee housing, and it continues to be an issue for the county. Even if the project provides employee housing for 75% of the staff, any additional housing needs will increase the impact on our community. So that's one of the concerns I have. Emergency services here, I can tell you over the last 30 years, we've seen changes, and as the population grows, we're seeing an impact, and there's been a strain on our community, and funding obviously is an issue. And if we don't get a commitment or some plan together to use some of the TOT or perhaps some other type of funding for these types of services, it's only going to get worse. I know the sheriff is struggling keeping staff just like we are up here in Pine Mountain Lake, and other businesses in town. So that's a real problem. And I can tell you, I've been through the Rim Fire, been through the Mock Fire, I've been through several other fires and evacuations of our community. And we really do have a concern about what will happen if we have a very large development right along that corridor where our folks need to get out. What do we do? And I appreciate the fact that the developer and a lot of folks planning have put a lot of time and effort into the review through this process. But I really would appreciate the board if you would consider our concerns before you look at approving this project, and perhaps make some adjustments that will benefit our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. We good?
This is Lorna Larson, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with me and my name. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, but there's some echo.
Okay.
So please, if you could turn off your speaker, that might stop the problem.
Yeah, we're having trouble with our connection here. Living on Big Creek, we don't have very good service.
Okay,
my question.
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
My question is we're all discussing all of this. What I want to know is, what is the timeline projected for the infrastructure to get itself together, get this project actually moving? Has there been any kind of projection how long it's going to take GCSD to get their infrastructure up to snuff so that this project can actually connect and get their water supply added, get their sewer systems updated? And if the case is it's going to take a couple of years, how is the economy going to affect that? We would all like to see this project done correctly. We'd love to see that happen. But the expense of the infrastructure getting up to speed, to me, seems to be a pretty insurmountable barrier. So I just, yes, I think there needs to be a little more thought put into this, and there needs to be some type of a timeline so that people know where we're at this with this project, and not just approve it on the fact that there is going to be infrastructure in place, because that is the big unknown at this point. It affects the fire, it affects the building, it affects the traffic. All of those things are part of this timeline. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't get your first name, but thank you, Ms. Larson. Lorna, thank you. Okay. With that being said, that does conclude public comment. So I am going to now close the public hearing. I'm going to ask for a 10-minute pause, bathroom break, collect our thoughts. It is 3:43, so let's call it, let's do 3:55. We'll come back at 3:55. Thank you, guys. One second. Okay, stand by. Check 1, 2. There you go. Okay. So we did close public comment. We're going to bring it back to the board for any discussion. I just need to remind our board that if we engage in conversation, or if we engage in questions of staff or the appellant or the applicant, we have to then reopen the hearing and then close it again later. So I believe we've asked our questions. I think this is a time to maybe make comment. At the end of comment, I'll look for a motion. So with that being said, I'm going to go to Supervisor Half. This does start in her district, so I'm going to give her the opportunity to speak first. Yes, public was closed before we adjourned earlier.
Okay, I've made chicken scratches everywhere, and I hope I can do this justice. First of all, I think that this Yonder Yosemite project is a very thoughtful, environmentally conscious project, and I applaud that. And I especially appreciate that there have been lots of communications with the public, with the local folks in the Groveland Big Oak Flat area, with the businesses, with environmental folks, to accommodate the local area and neighbors. So I just want to make sure I say that. And I want to hearken back to when a former board, I was not on it, but I watched and participated in all the proceedings, were moving through the Terra V and the under canvas process. And I heard, I don't know how many times, and local people stating this. Now, if this project were just at the SCAR, we need this project at the SCAR. Countless times, just build at the SCAR. So now it comes time to build at the SCAR, and there's a lot of people that are genuinely for this project, and then there are people that are not. And I wanted to speak to some of the things that were mentioned. Mary Beth is from the Sawmill Flat area. It looks like she's left, but I wanted to speak to her. She mentioned that the county was giving lip service to emergency services. And I want to state right here that this board has been behind the scenes, but has been working very consciously on playing catch up with trying to do emergency service infrastructure, trying to plan for it where former boards have not. So we are playing double time on this, and you will see this in upcoming board agendas. Let's see, to John Buckley, I do agree with you that the county has been remiss in planning, especially for emergency services and in our infrastructure. But I do believe that, like again, I was saying earlier, that we are diligently moving forward. And in that, I wanted to mention a couple of things. Up and coming at our very next meeting on May 3rd is a decision that will be before this board. And so I hope you remember today, whatever we decide, it will be a decision to add another fire engine and personnel to the GCSD fire station. So most people probably haven't heard this yet. This is new, but it will be up for us to decide that on May 3rd. And also, a countywide RFP will be going out, I believe sometime in May, to provide an evaluation for standards of coverage. Now, standards of coverage, it will be for all emergency services, and it will be for the whole county. We are planning for this. We have to do this. It should have been done a long time ago, yes. We're trying to do something about it now. So in this context, I want everybody to know that we aren't turning a blind eye to what we need. We're running as fast as we can. Let's see. Okay, so those are all of the things that I wanted to say. Out of our control is what Caltrans decides to do or not do. We're given that, and we have to decide how we better plan. And that's part of that is part of the sheriff's responsibility to plan better for evacuations. And we can't necessarily expect that they are going to be building sidewalks everywhere. We haven't gotten Caltrans to build sidewalks in downtown Groveland as yet after 20 years of requesting it. But I can tell you that I have been working with the executive director of TCTC, Tuolumne County Transportation Council, and with the general manager of GCSD to plan for trails. And there is something in the works for the trail that goes from Big Oak Flat across the street from where this development is projected to be built, that goes all the way up to the Resiliency Center. And those two people that I mentioned to you are working on that right now. So that would help with the pedestrian flow, a safe pedestrian flow, also for cycles, possibly for bicycles. So these things are not concrete in stone. They're not built yet, but they are coming. And I think this is the board that will get those things done that have been long overdue. And with that, I am in favor of this project.
Okay, I'm going to go to my right, Supervisor Campbell.
Yeah, I think Supervisor Heff, representing District 4, I think made some very good comments. To me, it's our role in this, the Board of Supervisors, is fairly simple. And I just look at what I do with every type of development that's come before the board. So I look at, has the developer followed all applicable rules, regulations, and in general, are they acting in good faith and with best practices? And I think in this case, they absolutely are. I think they've proven that with the project and the outreach to the community. So that's there. The next element is it good for the community? And that's the one where, the developer can follow all the rules, but we're not just a rubber stamp here. We need to actually look, is this something we want in the area? And as has been said many times before, the SCAR, actually you should name it something else, something nicer, for the location while you're building on it. But that location is pretty much the poster child for failed development in Tuolumne County. And the idea that we have an opportunity to right that wrong and to put something that our community can be proud of and that can be contributing to not just TOT, but to the beauty and the reason for people wanting to visit
Groveland. I think that's something that we should embrace. You know, I think a fair critique was brought up about the lack of emergency services infrastructure in the area. That's definitely a problem. But I think there's an expectation that we should have all of the infrastructure in place for every type of development that might happen sometime in the future in that area before any of that development happens. And that would be a wonderful thing, and that would be ideal. But that doesn't really work in the real world. I think these things have to happen concurrently, that as new development comes in, new services come in to meet them, and as new services are brought online, new development comes. And so there's kind of an ebb and flow there where we try to meet in the middle as best we can. And I think that this board is doing an excellent job of trying to meet that demand up on the 120 corridor. I think we all recognize that there are a lot of opportunities given the amount of visitation to our national park, and that this area has really been discovered in the state and nationally by work that's gone in the county, whether it's Visit Tuolumne or a lot of other people. And so we need to embrace the fact that this is an area that is going to have a lot of interest from developers and from tourists. And so our job is to figure out how to make that happen in a way that's not going to adversely affect the community. And I think the project that we have here before us accomplishes that. So I'm supportive. I can't find a reason to be that would overly burden me in giving approval to this.
All right, Supervisor Goldenberg.
Okay, so, yeah, looking at a number of items here, you know, I just wanted to express appreciation for our Planning Commission's efforts in reviewing and looking at the project. You know, they made a statement when they voted 7-0, I believe, to approve it. I'm also appreciative of the, you know, GCSD, you know, how they looked at the infrastructure areas, water, sewer, as well as fire. Caltrans, along with our public works, looked at access issues. And that included, to some extent, you know, traffic flows, but I don't think that was their prime consideration. I was appreciative of seeing that we had support from the business community in several ways, including the Chamber of Commerce there. So all that said, you know, we look at, you know, the difficulties in that whole area, right? And, you know, so I'll speak from my background with CAL FIRE here, you know, looking at, you know, the considerations and the concerns regarding fire protection, ingress, egress issues. Do we need a new fire station or not? And, you know, the bottom line is we've got a hole in service, you know, especially to the east of Groveland. You know, when you're headed up towards Yosemite, we've got a number of projects, you know, that have been up there for some time. You know, obviously Evergreen, Rush Creek, you know, recently looking at, you know, under canvas, Terra V is getting pretty close, I think. And we're looking at Yonder, which is much closer into town, of course. But they all come about, you know, with a lot of concern. And I'll stress that, a lot of concern amongst the public and amongst the professionals that are charged with trying to, you know, protect the citizens in those areas. And it's not just fire, you know, law enforcement, you know, plays a strong part in this. Supervisor Kirk, you know, made a statement, you know, kind of a question to County Council, you know, regarding TOT funds. Absolutely correct. You know, we can't say we're going to take TOT funds and we're going to dedicate them, you know, to a new fire station. But, you know, my challenge to our board would be that we absolutely because those funds, when they come in, TOT funds come in, they're general funds. So we absolutely can make the decision ourselves on establishing a fire station. And, perhaps it's co-located with a deputy from the sheriff's office, because every project that you add on is going to increase, services on the law enforcement side as well. So we need to look at that seriously. I do respect and appreciate John Buckley from CSERC and his comments. We haven't always been on the same side of, some discussions along the way, but, he mentioned several things: greenhouse gases, traffic impacts, parking, and partnership with GCSD, water, sewer, and fire. So I appreciate and respect your comments, John, for, speaking up to that. So I am as well supportive of this project, and just wanted to lay out the path for our future, that we do have to address emergency services seriously in that area. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Goldberg. I'm going to hand it over to Supervisor Brandon.
And one quick clarifying question to legal counsel about, obviously one of the options here is to be able to suggest something with modifications. Is that something where we are able to ask staff about without reopening the public hearing, as the chairman said? Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I just, my colleague spoke very well to, I think, a lot of the points that I wanted to make is in agreement. Supervisor Half mentioned that we're playing catch up. We've only had a little over a year, and those projects for three of us were approved when we were not on this board. And in so many ways in this community, we are trying to, I think, one, we have to deal with sometimes what has been done, but address it and be better and think more long-term about the needs of our community. And I feel very much the same way about that. And I very much agree with Supervisor Campbell as well, that this board is not carte blanche, it's not a rubber stamp, it's not about development, it's not about environmental regulations, it's first and only about the community, the county community, the local community, as well as the neighbors to a project. It says so much to have, I think, this developer and also CSERC as well, and I greatly do appreciate, John, your input on these projects, to be able to come together. Too often you see it's lawsuits, it's divisive, it's confrontational, and this is a real example of, I think, being exceptionally proactive and receiving community feedback and going above and beyond what we ask on that. And as an example to, I think, any future folks working in Tuolumne County, I'm pro-economic development. I want to see housing, I want to see opportunity here, but it has to be done in a way that makes our community better off for it. And I'm confident that this project meets that. It's a lot of material to read over, but it's thinking about future technology changes with ZEVs, it's thinking about conservation, it's thinking about resiliency and fire. And I think this entire board, as I've heard from my colleagues as well, agree that there is an issue on the 120 corridor, and that's up to Duke County to solve, that there is a need there. I think it's been adequately covered inside of this document, but that doesn't mean there isn't a further need for us to address. So I appreciate hearing that. I think that's important. Not my district, and all respect to Mrs. Horn too, I forgot your name, Shirley. I want my district to kick your district's butt, absolutely. We are all looking out, I think, for our areas, but we're all doing better when we're able to see these projects come in that bring opportunity. My favorite folks who work in a restaurant out in Columbia, they live in Groveland. The fact that this project voluntarily includes housing, which is so critical and so important to me, speaks volumes to your intentions. And I just want to say that thank you for bearing with a lot of detailed questions. I think it's very important we go through that, but you did a really great job on that. My only request in this may be to staff with that. We're asking, there were some verbal commitments that were made at this meeting. I'm a professional amateur at this. To make sure that those are not just oral agreements, but written down as well. I wanted to ask, of those agreements and some of the community measures by the applicant, which ones of those that, let's say we all got head nods that we really liked, which are written down and which ones do we need to amend as a condition of approval for this.
Sure. So Supervisor Brandon, we actually, that's why we needed a little bit of time, is because we did draft, and our intent is to incorporate all of the applicants' offerings into the conditions of approval, so all of them.
Great, thank you. We've got great staff, really great staff. Other than that, I only had one more recommendation. This may not have to be a condition of approval. Fire is brought up constantly, especially the threat to Big O Flack, to Groveland, communities that have faced that. Our Everbridge system and expanding the number of residents in particular that are on our reverse 911 is very important to us. You can see on our wall we have fire prevention safety. That is one of the goals there. One unmet need on that is tourists and visitors here. What do they do in an evacuation? And if there's any way, as a personal request, to incorporate either optionally or as part of the registration process, Everbridge, so that anybody there, if an emergency happens, they are getting up-to-the-date information from the county and from our first responders and disaster managers, OES. It would be a huge help, and I think it would be a model to many other hospitality establishments. And anybody listening, if you haven't signed up, please do so. Email us if you have any questions. It's incredibly important we get people onto that. With that, thank you.
So I'd just like to speak briefly to your last comment, Supervisor Brandon. Supervisor Campbell and I are both on the Fire Safety Committee. We are actively looking at all of the properties out there, whether they be hotels, motels, Airbnbs, or otherwise. As far as preparing them to the best of our abilities, we have a subcommittee that's looking at that distinctly. And you know, another, besides just the Everbridge, we're also actively looking at another system called FM Alert, which brings about huge additional possibilities for reaching out to people because self-service is limited in many areas. So I, you know, just wanted to put that out there so you're aware.
And thank you both for your work on that as well. I know we have a lot of really good conversations happening, and it's in good hands.
Okay, can I get a I just want to clarify, what were the verbals? Do you have a list of them? Or do I have to open up public hearing? Sure. I guess just and these are all extras that are not mandated, is that correct?
Yeah, so these are in addition to what our standards and codes would require. Right now, with respect, the Energy Star label is slightly above the Cal Green code, so it's in terms of an energy efficiency, it's better than what would be just generally required. Okay. Right now, the electric vehicle charging requirements in the code actually is just for the infrastructure, not to actually place the charging station itself. So they're going above that. Also above in terms of the plumbing for future. The reason I worded it this way is that those will change drastically. Those minimum standards will change with our new building code that we will be adopting later this year. So it's possible these will still be beyond what those minimums are, but that's why it's written the way it's written.
Okay. All right, I'll make my comments real quick. So actually, before I make my comments, I want to clarify. Supervisor Brandon is suggesting that we add like Everbridge to people being signed up, but it sounds like that's being discussed through the Firewise committee, the subcommittee.
I'm not
so
suggesting.
Do we want to? What was that?
I said I'm not suggesting that.
Oh, okay.
It was a recommendation to.
Okay, recommendation.
Good idea.
So it wasn't going to be a condition.
No.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify that. Okay. So my comments are. I'll keep this short and simple. Hopefully, employee housing. That's a big deal. It blew my mind that you guys are doing that for free. I think there's a lot of concern that that might create more issues with housing, but my guess is there's going to be some locals in Groveland who are going to jump on that. If they get a job, potentially jump on that, and that's going to open up housing more in Groveland area. And I think, you know, especially even Sonora, other communities. So So I think that's a great thing. Water sewage hookup, you guys covered. Above and beyond as far as power energy, which CSERC brought up. Again, there's 2 fire stations nearby when we're talking about fire. You guys are gonna, looks like, donate potentially to the Groveland Service District. So I mean, I think what I'm trying to relay is you guys did a really good job of reaching out to the community before you get to the board and hear a lot of concerns. You guys covered all that beforehand, and so that's appreciative. The size, I keep hearing everybody get caught up in the size and the amount of units, which I don't really understand, because say this thing was 10 square miles, and we might have something before us that was 500 units. I don't know. But when I do a quick Google search, in 2016, we had 5.03 million people come to Yosemite. In 2020, we had 3.29. So if you do the average, which is 4 million, and you divide that by days in the year, that's about 11,000 visitors a day. Most of those guys come in the summertime, so let's just say 18,000 people a day. So when we're talking about 175 rooms, that quarter sees a ton of traffic. And the way I perceive this is, instead of them going up and down, they're actually going to have somewhere to stay. It's going to bless the local economy, bless the locals. And a lot of people, they're not going to be going to Yosemite every day. They're going to come there, stay there for a few days. All the hotels and whatnot. I actually think it gives more capacity, and there's also a day use system going in place. So there's all these little things that are happening to kind of alleviate that quarter. When it comes to fire safety, again, I want to reiterate what Supervisor Half said as far as we're not doing lip service. We've hired an OES coordinator. We put more, this board and the previous board have put more funding towards fire than ever before, increased it by hundreds of percentages. We've worked with GSD in the past. We're going to continue in the future. Even just up the road from you guys, there's actually a fire siren that an alert system, audible alert system that just got put in at Groveland, and we're actually looking to maybe eventually go down to Big Oak Flat area, and that's going to be on the item on May 3rd. So I mean, there's so much attention going towards fire and safety. So I want to end it simply by saying, yeah, I do believe you guys followed the rules. I think our staff did a great job of presenting it, checking all the boxes. Thank you for reaching out to CSERC and John for your opinion, even though it comes with some criticism. It's taken well, and for me, it made my job easier today. So with that being said, I do want to
before we motion and vote, I just want to express appreciation in looking at the electric vehicle charging, because we're seeing an increasingly amount of vehicles come there. So anything that can be done in that area, not trying to hold it to, but there's an awful lot of them on the road, and there's more coming. So thanks.
And and this is relevant to the additional conditions that were added here. One that we did talk about was the local hire, request local hire, local buy within some threshold. And it seemed like that was agreed to, but to staff, if that can be included in this list as well.
Well, and that kind of comes, and I'm not going to cut you off, because if the board wants to include it, that kind of brings me to my point where it sounds like we're going to have 2 options. We're going to have, we can have a motion to include all these. I'm going to put forth a motion not to include all these, and the reason I want to make it clear is this group has gone above and beyond to check the boxes. It's already hard enough to get up and running in California with the building and the codes and all this stuff that they have to go through. If they want to do this, and believe me, if there's a need for electric vehicles, that's going to be, they have the infrastructure, that's going to be something that's going to attract business. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to get in the weeds of their business plan. If they have met the project requirements and they want to give a verbal on this, that's fine. But I don't want to hold their feet to the fire, and I definitely don't want to get into, I don't want to get into the business of telling a business who to hire, when to hire, how many to hire locally. I think that's up to them. It's a business decision that I think you guys should make. So respectfully, what I'm suggesting is, and if I have to put forth the motion, I will, is that we approve it as is and not include these. And if they want to follow up on these, great. But that would be my suggestion.
And I'm not going to follow that. I'd like to make a motion to approve site development permit SDP 20-005 based upon the findings A through D and subject to the conditions 1 through 100, which does include that. I believe you. I believe that you're sincere in what you are suggesting, but I would like to codify it, which includes the additional community benefit offerings from the applicant. That would be written into the.
And Supervisor Half, I just want to make sure you're also recommending approving the mitigated negative declaration for the site development permit based on findings A through F.
All that.
Thank you.
I second.
Okay.
So just to clarify, that was a motion and then
It's a motion to
alternative
include these as well.
Include these
So-
items.
So does your motion still stand?
So my motion, well, what,
Because I was going to second that, because
okay,
I have similar feelings.
okay, so I put forth the motion, help me out, council.
So you can have another motion, because you can have two motions on the table.
Sure, so we got two motions on the table.
So do we have the motion? Do we have a second? You take-
I will second the motion, and I'll just say briefly, the only thing here, the thing I worry about is holding you to something that could change and, like, for example, charging stations or providing a 10-person shuttle. We might be able to work something out through transit or something. So there might be a better option than what's proposed here, but if we hold them to this, what's presented, they're stuck. And then the only thing that I would really want to see for sure is the 120,000 for the vehicle. But that's kind of, I would assume GCSD would be holding them to that anyway, so.
So then your new motion would be to include,
Well, I would.
to strike them except for
I
that.
would second
Okay.
your motion.
Okay.
That to not require items, so same motion as Supervisor Half, but not requiring items 96 through 100.
Let's be clear here. So we have one motion that incorporates everything that the applicant offered. Then we have a second motion that is the project presented as is in the original staff report. So we need to take a vote on the most recent.
Can I ask a quick
motion.
question
Yes.
before we head to a vote? Can we perhaps ask the applicant
That was going to be my suggestion.
their thoughts on
Do I have to open
this?
up public hearing?
Will including these items unduly jam you up in your project or create
gonna
any
open
kind
up
of
public hearing.
problems that we're not
No,
considering?
never mind, because we're asking a clarifying question. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is this working? Yeah. Appreciate all of that. Very, very interesting discussion. It would be our preference, if you're so willing to approve the project with those written conditions we provided, period. Meaning all of those items, because in the future, it could be important to other things that may come up, to have that solidly in there and show the additional accommodations we're offering.
Okay.
With regards to the sort of side stuff like Supervisor Brandon mentioned on the local labor, hard to nail that down on a specific, so it's an obvious thing. We want local folks. It's more efficient. It helps us in every way. So respecting what Supervisor Half said about codifying, we'd like to codify the items we offered and have you trust us that we will be going to local folks first.
Thank you. That's acceptable to me on my point, and I would agree with Supervisor Half and her motion.
And I feel better now that you've said
Yeah,
you
I
want to
very
include
much
those.
appreciate your
So
clarification.
we have Half's offer back on the table.
So do you want to withdraw your
Yeah, I
motion?
withdraw my motion.
And I'll
Thanks.
I'll
I
second
withdraw my
it again.
second. Trying to make it easier, but
I'll second Supervisor
realistic.
Half's.
Call for the vote.
I will call for the vote. I had a first by Half, a second by Goldenberg, correct? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Any abstain? None? Okay. Motion, or it passes 5-0. Thank you, staff. Thank you, guys. Thank you to everybody who called and voiced your support or opposition. Our board is listening, even though sometimes it doesn't go the way folks like. We do appreciate everybody's time and their comments. So with that being said, we are going to go into we have a closed session item. Do we expect to report out? And we do not expect to report out. So that will adjourn this portion of the meeting. And we do need public comment on closed session. Does anybody want to comment on closed session item, which you will not get to listen to?
It's like herding cats right now.
And we are going to read it. Please read it.
Closed session conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Authority Government Code Section 54956.9D1, Save Sawmill Mountain et al. Versus County of Tuolumne et al., Tuolumne County Superior Court Case Number CV63614.
Now I will call for public comment on the closed session item. Is there any public comment? Any on Zoom? All right, and are we going to be doing it in here? Okay. All right, thank you guys. You can go outside now. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.